Chapter 314. Unsworn Sword, and the others didn't dare to be careless in the slightest when faced with the dangers of their own guild's quests. The team continued forward. At this time, Reflection Years had already found 2 thieves and instructed them to stay in place after entering stealth. They were to observe if any players were following them. The 2 players were from the mercenary group. This was also the main guiding principle of this mission. If there was danger, the mercenary group would go first. The 2 thieves stayed at the end of the party in stealth. Unsworn Sword and Reflection Years anxiously waited for news. Silvermoon's anxiety wasn't any less than theirs. In fact, she seemed even more concerned. This made Unsworn Sword and Reflection of Years extremely touched. In such a materialistic world, where else could they find such a responsible mercenary? Just think of those guys from the child elite group. They only knew how to ask for money. The party continued forward for another 15 minutes, but there was still no news. The core leaders were all thinking. Silvermoon was about to give them a hint, but Unsworn Sword already said to Reflection Years, "Maybe it's a thief. They're already in stealth." "Probably." Reflection Years nodded. "If that's the case, we can't just sit back and wait," Unsworn Sword said. "But if we let them keep following behind, it's not certain who will discover who," Reflection Years said. Everyone nodded. In the early stages of the game, thieves were the best choice for a large-scale party like this. However, as players leveled up and their equipment improved, thieves were starting to fall behind. Why? Because of speed. When a thief entered stealth, their movement speed would be greatly reduced to 25% of their original movement speed. The slowest class in the parallel world, priests, had a movement speed growth of 0.7. Without agility, their naked running speed at level 40 was 70 plus 40x 0.7 is equal to 98. Currently, there was a new popular level 40 item called the Boots of Nimbleness, which gave priests a movement speed of plus 80. This way, a priest's movement speed could reach 178. The Boots of Nimbleness were produced in large quantities and had a low market price, so the usage rate was very high. Even ordinary priests could get a pair. These characters were basically first-rate or quasi-first-rate players. Their shoes could only be better than this. They couldn't be any worse. For a thief to reach this level while in stealth, they would need to have 712 movement speed. 712 movement speed was no joke. This was a superhuman number. Gu Fei's movement speed was already considered to be extremely high, but it was only around 500. Even the slimming dance wasn't as freakish as the 712's movement. That was why, unless players were intentionally slowing down, the days of thieves boldly tailing players in stealth were long gone. At this time, the Cloud City players were advancing at full speed. If a thief tried to tail them, they would only be left behind if they maintained stealth the entire time. So, from time to time, they would need to reveal themselves and chase after them. How to catch them when they appear was the main topic of research for anti-thief tailing. For example, Unsworn Sword and the others had used previously. Letting a few thieves enter stealth and observe the situation from the sidelines was obviously a method to test their luck. Who knows if the thief will reveal himself when he passes by your line of sight? Qianli from Child Elite Group seems to have anti-stealth abilities when he's drunk, Feng Xing said. Damn, without him, how are we going to complete this quest? Reflection Years was indignant. Unsworn Sword was also a bit unhappy. If he went looking for him again, who knew how much more money that Han family young master would have to extort from him? Speaking of which, it was strange. Why did this quest seem to be designed for Qianli drunk? He needed to come out and solve the crisis from time to time. Don't look for him, we'll think of a way ourselves. Reflection Years said to Unsworn Sword. Unsworn Sword nodded, and turned his gaze to his mercenary role model, Silvermoon. Brother Silvermoon, do you have any good ideas? At the moment, the only thing that can be anti-stealth is traps, Silvermoon said. Traps? Reflection Years muttered. This isn't very reliable either. If we don't know the enemy's route, it's useless. Let's try it as a last resort for now. Isn't there such a group this time? Unsworn Sword said. Reflection Years nodded and sent a message to his group, calling for the leader of the big hunt, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka, to come over. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka quickly rushed over and greeted everyone. As soon as Silvermoon saw this person, she recognized him as the fellow who was currently mingling with Boundless Mang. She thought that he probably wouldn't have a good expression on his face, so she didn't ask for a rebuff and consciously dodged to the side. Sure enough, when Tsubasa Sakuratsuka saw Silvermoon, he looked down on him. After being chased for a whole day the day before yesterday, they had to understand the whole story. Silvermoon's role as a scumbag in this story couldn't be explained from any angle. What's the matter? Tsubasa Sakuratsuka asked Unsworn Sword and the others. Reflection Years quickly explained, then asked, "Most of your group are spies, right?" Tsubasa Sakuratsuka sighed regretfully. Originally, but a few days ago, 22 of them died in Moonlit Night City, so they're no longer. That's true. Reflection Years was in a trance. When they left Moonlit Night City, the various mercenary groups compared their losses in Moonlit Night City. He heard that Tsubasa Sakuratsuka boasted that they fought against the 10 Guild Alliance and sacrificed 22 people. At that time, everyone thought he was bragging, but now they knew it was true. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka's face was full of grievance. What do you think? Less is less. There should be some spies in the other groups and our guild, right? Let's gather them together first. Brother Tsubasa, take command. Unsworn Sword said, then turned his head to the side and added, "What do you think, Brother Silvermoon?" "You bastard," Silvermoon thought. At this moment, he really wanted to cry, but no tears came out. However, he also knew that Unsworn Sword's words and actions were not beyond reproach. After all, this was Silvermoon's idea. Asking for Unsworn Sword's opinion before coming up with the plan was also a sign of Unsworn Sword's respect for him. As expected, when Tsubasa Sakuratsuka heard that this plan included Silvermoon's shares, he was very unhappy. It was as if he was sent by Silvermoon to work for him. This was too embarrassing. Thinking of this, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka suddenly clutched his stomach. "Ah, my stomach hurts. Not good, not good. I'm going to leave first. You guys organize yourselves." Reflection Years had just called out a word, but Tsubasa Sakuratsuka's 500+ movement speed was fake. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared. What happened? Reflection Years looked at Unsworn Sword in confusion. "I don't know." Unsworn Sword was also at a loss. They weren't stupid. Of course, they wouldn't believe the stomach pain. It was obviously an excuse. That's what you get for your mouth, Silvermoon thought to himself. Without them, we really can't gather up lurkers. Reflection Years was depressed. Lurkers were an unpopular class to begin with, and very few people switched to it. Reigning the Four Seas used arrow array as their signature skill, so they encouraged their archers to switch to marksmen. As for those who didn't know how to use traps, they could wait until the guild leveled up before recruiting. So right now they didn't have any talents in this area. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka's sudden departure immediately ruined their plan. "If this doesn't work, let's find Qianli and get drunk," Feng Xing said. Unsworn Sword and Reflection Years gritted their teeth. Silvermoon also casually said, "Once Qianli gets drunk, he's not too reliable, right?" On the surface, he seemed very casual, but in reality, Silvermoon was extremely nervous. He had been busy for half a day, not for some Reigning the Four Seas quest, but for his own safety. He wanted to find out if there were any scouts from Yin Zhongmu or Lani. If there were, then he would use Reigning the Four Seas to deal with them. If he let Qianli get drunk, he would quickly be in cahoots with the other side. When he returned, he would definitely tell Unsworn Sword, it's fine. Go on, go on. That person is indeed very shameless, despicable, and cunning," Reflection Years said. Silvermoon was very happy to hear this. "But his skills are indeed terrifying," Feng Xing said. Silvermoon wasn't happy to hear this, but she couldn't help but be convinced. Leaving this matter to him will definitely be no problem. Unsworn Sword said. Silvermoon's face was ashen. "But the problem is that it's too expensive." Unsworn Sword continued. Silvermoon's face showed a hint of life. "What the hell is this Tsubasa Sakuratsuka doing?" Reflection Years mumbled. He called out twice in the channel, but no one answered. Silvermoon didn't dare to make a sound. "I'll go find him," Reflection Years wanted to go talk to Tsubasa Sakuratsuka face to face. Silvermoon was happy again. Forget it. Unsworn Sword said. From the looks of it, he probably wants to use this opportunity to ask for a high price. Since he's going to pay, why not let the more reliable and effective Qianli get drunk? Silvermoon really wanted to strangle Unsworn Sword to death. Reflection Years was also very unhappy, but he also admitted that Unsworn Sword's words were reasonable. Since Tsubasa Sakuratsuka also wanted to extort money, he might as well find Qianli and get drunk. Let's call him. Unsworn Sword sighed. He couldn't help but think of the Han family young master, and subconsciously touched his money bag. This time, Silvermoon took the initiative to stand in a conspicuous position. He hoped that when Qianli saw him, he would be like Tsubasa Sakuratsuka and leave in disdain. When Gu Fei arrived, Silvermoon didn't wait for Sword of Oathless to say anything. She took the initiative to help Gu Fei, secretly ordering him around in a commanding tone. Unfortunately, he underestimated our teacher Gu Fei's professionalism. Gu Fei didn't say a word. He quietly listened to their plan and nodded, saying, "Okay, I got it. You guys continue on your way. Please." Unsworn Sword patted Gu Fei's shoulder. Gu Fei nodded and pointed at Silvermoon, saying, "Be careful." Silvermoon's entire body froze. The surrounding players looked at him as if they were looking at a dead man. Chapter 315. Gu Fei's parting words made Silvermoon almost want to pack up and run away. He felt that if Gu Fei went, not only would he not discover anything, he might even draw the assassins that wanted to kill him to his side. He had been too careless. How could he have exposed himself to Qianli's drunken? Silvermoon was filled with regret and hatred. However, Silvermoon didn't want to just sit there and wait for death. In the blink of an eye, he had another idea. Should we give Qianli's drunken a few helpers? They have their own mercenary group. Unsworn Sword's reply made Silvermoon feel that if he didn't leave now, he really wouldn't have another chance. However, Unsworn Sword quickly slapped his head. That's right. We don't need to use all their people. We can send our own helpers. Unsworn Sword just wanted to reduce the cost. However, this made Silvermoon very happy. If Reigning the Four Seas people followed him, would Gu Fei still be able to go easy on Cloud Morning and the others? Don't let him know. Follow him in secret. Silvermoon's plan was more ruthless than the last. If Gu Fei had followed him from all four corners of the world, he would have pretended that he hadn't noticed him and used his information to guide him. If he followed him in secret, he might be able to see Gu Fei going easy on them. Not only would he be able to take care of Cloud Morning and the others, but Gu Fei would also be seen as a traitor. This was the legendary killing two birds with one stone. However, after saying this, the three core members of Reigning the Four Seas looked at Silvermoon strangely. Not good. Silvermoon thought to himself. It's too obvious. Silvermoon opened his mouth to say something to cover up, but he heard Time's reflection say, "Stealth is useless against Qianli's drunken." Silvermoon froze. In a moment of desperation, he had forgotten about this and came up with an unreliable idea. Not resting for a long time and being extremely nervous and anxious. This was a huge blow to a person's mind. Silvermoon was in such a state right now. But let's call some thief brothers. Sneaking around Qianli's drunken will numb the enemy. Unsworn Sword said. They didn't know what Silvermoon was planning. Okay, I'll arrange it. Time's reflection said. For these kinds of people who might have to face a battle, the first choice was naturally the mercenaries. Mercenary groups like the Child Elite Group had to charge extra fees for doing something special. This was a special clause that the Han family young master had fought for. Most of the mercenary groups had a one-off deal with Unhindered Four Seas. They would receive the money and obey Unhindered Four Seas orders. It was that simple. Find someone reliable. Unsworn Sword said. Should we ask Little Shang to bring some people over? Reflection of Years asked Unsworn Sword for his opinion. Alright. Unsworn Sword nodded. Honestly speaking, there were so many mercenary groups out there, and the only one that could be considered trustworthy was the Rainbow Cloud mercenary group led by Gu Xiaoshang. In the mercenary competition, Gu Xiaoshang had lost to the fourth place against the current mercenary group. On the child elite group side, when Gu Fei returned, everyone naturally asked him what was going on. When Gu Fei said this, a few of them understood and said, Cloud Twilight's people? There's no need for him to send people over. What are you guessing about? Won't we know after asking? After sending the message to Cloud Twilight, he became nervous. No, we're all preparing at the Knight's camp. What, is there an accident? There's no problem. Sword Demon, who was in charge of communication, replied. In the end, he said to the other side, It's not Cloud Twilight. There's another person. Han Family Young Master said. He also wants to kill Silvermoon. I think it's someone from the previous world. It might be them. That's still someone who's on the same side. Unscathed in Battle said. Han Family Young Master frowned and asked Gu Fei. There's someone following us. The people behind us don't know, but the people in front of them know first. Gu Fei spread his hands, indicating that he didn't know. Maybe Silvermoon has already sensed it. Brother, you said. There's no need to sense it. He'll figure it out even if he thinks. But if it's his plan, why would he ask Qianli to come out? This won't help him at all. Han Family Young Master was smart, but he didn't expect Silvermoon to lift a rock and smash his own foot. At this time, he was also depressed. But this guy is following Unsworn Sword and the others. It won't be easy for us to take action. Sword Demon said. Causing internal strife in front of Unsworn Sword, and the others was too much. It was too unbecoming of a mercenary. But we finally know where he is. Brother, you said. For them, the biggest value of Gu Fei's trip was that he found Silvermoon's location. This was Silvermoon's oversight. He was anxious about the east and forgot about the west. Forget it, you go. The people following behind are most likely targeting Silvermoon. Look at the situation and let them go. Han Family Young Master said. You guys aren't going? Gu Fei was surprised. Reflection years already informed me. This time, they're asking for your help. The rest of us won't get much money even if we help. Why would we go? Han Family Young Master stretched. Then I'll go. Gu Fei did not mind. Just as he was about to leave the group, he saw a large group of people walking in the opposite direction, and stopping in front of them. The woman in the lead was Gu Xiaoshang, who had argued with Sworn Sword at the mercenary gathering in the tavern. Qianli is drunk. We'll go with you, the woman called out as she reached him. Oh. Han Family Young Master suddenly understood. Wait here. I was wondering how we could let Qianli go. There's an army supervisor. Han Family Young Master spoke as if there was no one else around, completely ignoring the fact that the woman was right in front of him. Gu Xiaoshang turned her head and glanced at him, but ignored him. She turned back to Gu Fei and said, Let's go. Gu Fei nodded his head and followed them out of the group. They weren't going anywhere, they just wanted to wait for the people behind them. Stealth. Gu Xiaoshang waved her hand. The thieves in her group immediately went into stealth, leaving only her and Gu Fei standing in the middle of the path. My name is Gu Xiaoshang. Gu Xiaoshang introduced herself to Gu Fei. Qianli is drunk. Although the other party had already called his name, a formal introduction was still necessary. I heard you're really strong? Gu Xiaoshang said. I'm okay. Gu Fei said. You're not humble at all. Gu Xiaoshang laughed. I'm already humble. Gu Fei laughed. In my situation, if I say no, I'm still bad. Isn't that just insulting people? Haha. Gu Xiaoshang laughed. She pulled out a huge sword from her pocket and stuck it in front of her. The orange-red warrior armor wasn't as exquisite as the ones chosen by the average female player. What stood out from the rest was the orange cape draped over her shoulders, fluttering in the wind behind her. It was very eye-catching. Seeing that Gu Fei was looking at her cape, Gu Xiaoshang laughed. How is it? Cool, right? Gu Fei also laughed. Cool. But fighting will be a bit of a hindrance. The cape was indeed cool, but if you really fought, dragging such a long piece of cloth behind you and letting it flutter in the wind, who knows when it might wrap around your arms or legs. That would basically be useless. Not to mention the cape, even Gu Fei's night spirit robe wasn't very convenient to move around in. After all, it wasn't designed for a warrior. The long hem, in particular, was very troublesome. However, Fireball's method of unbuttoning the mage's robe seemed to be a solution. Gu Fei already had the intention to wear it that way, but just as Fireball said, his inner clothes were too ugly. He had to update them first. I can take it off when I fight. Gu Xiaoshang waved her hand and pulled the cape off her neck. She reached out to grab it and gestured to Gu Fei. Look, it's very convenient. Around your neck? Doesn't it feel tight? Gu Fei was surprised. Not at all. Look, there are 2 buckles here. They're actually hanging on my shoulder pads. The knot is just to secure it. It's specially designed for my armor. How about it? Are you interested? Gu Xiaoshang asked. Forget it. Gu Fei laughed. If you want to do it, find me anytime. I know a player in Cloud City who's learning tailoring. What's even better is that he's a fashion designer and his skills are very good. There's someone here. Gu Fei cried out. Where? Gu Xiaoshang quickly picked up the long sword in front of her. Oh, I'm sorry, I saw wrongly. Gu Fei said. Oh. Gu Xiaoshang stuck the sword back into the ground and pitifully put the cape back on her body. Gu Fei was speechless. This person's aura was very strong, but it was definitely a woman. Speaking of which, how do you counter stealth? Gu Xiaoshang asked Gu Fei. Killing intent. Gu Fei said. Killing intent. Gu Xiaoshang didn't understand. Yeah, I practice martial arts, so I'm very sensitive to these things. Gu Fei said. Really? Gu Xiaoshang said. Of course. Then teach me. Gu Xiaoshang said. Without 10 years of hard work, you won't be able to do it. Gu Fei said. Don't try to scare me. You must be joking. Gu Xiaoshang said. Gu Fei bitterly laughed. It's true. Gu Xiaoshang still didn't believe him. Just as he was about to say something, he saw Gu Fei's smile disappear. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a long sword. Someone's coming. Where? Stealth. It's right in front of us. Gu Fei said as he raised his hand. Flaming 3,000 layers flames rise. I don't insta-kill him. Let's talk. Gu Xiaoshang hurriedly said. Got it. Tell your subordinates to stop staring at me and stand in a line. Gu Fei said. Chapter 316. It wasn't easy for the stealthy thieves to set up a formation. Because they couldn't see each other. The slightest contact would expose both of them. This was something that thieves had to be very careful about in a team. The settings of the parallel world weren't complicated. In fact, it was even simpler than many old MMOs. But because of the holographic simulation, there was a lot to learn. Regardless of how the thieves lined up, no one would bump into each other and expose themselves. On the other hand, Gu Xiaoshang looked at Gu Fei in surprise. Where's your spell? It's a bit slow. As soon as Gu Fei finished his words, the ground in front of him was suddenly engulfed in flames. Amidst the flames, 5 thieves instantly revealed themselves. Gu Fei's casting was very stealthy. Plus, the other side didn't expect that the person in front of them could see through their stealth, so they weren't on guard. The spell hit all of them. Gu Fei raised his hand and pointed in a certain direction. Heavenly Fire Wheel, descend. Before the fire wheel appeared, 3 thieves had already flashed out of the ground and fled in all directions. There was nothing they could do. Moving in stealth was too slow. It was impossible to dodge the bombardment of AoE spells. Since they would be exposed anyway, they might as well show themselves to avoid the damage. Gu Fei had set his main hand to be empty-handed, so the 2 AoE spells didn't do much damage. The 8 thieves were at a loss. They didn't know how they were discovered. Gu Xiaoshang stepped forward with unparalleled momentum. She gently pulled the knot of her cloak with her left hand. With a whoosh, the wind blew her cloak off her shoulders. She was so cool that words couldn't describe it. Who are you? Gu Xiaoshang grabbed the long sword in the ground with her right hand and asked in a low voice. Gu Fei leaned over and whispered. Your cloak has been blown away by the wind. Gu Xiaoshang hurriedly looked back. Sure enough, her cloak didn't fall to the ground. Because the wind was too strong, it just floated away. But she didn't panic and snapped her fingers in the wind. Immediately, one of the thieves beside him revealed his true form and chased after the cloak. Everyone was dumbfounded. It was rare to see such a cool girl. Ahem. Gu Fei coughed to remind everyone to pay attention. Everyone came back to their senses. Gu Xiaoshang raised his hand. Surround them. The 8 people were naturally quite shocked because they only saw 3 people, and one of them had gone to chase after the cloaked figure. Of course, from the movements of the person chasing after the cloaked figure, the 8 of them quickly realized that their opponent also had a thief hiding nearby. Who are you people? Gu Xiaoshang asked again. The 8 of them did not answer. Who are you looking for? Gu Fei's question was very enlightening. At the same time, he was thinking about how he should go easy on these 8 people if they were looking for Silvermoon. However, the 8 of them still did not answer. This made the 2 of them very hesitant. Gu Fei needed to confirm the other party's identity, but Gu Xiaoshang also wanted to find out the other party's intentions. If you don't say anything, we're going to make a move, Gu Xiaoshang threatened. However, the thief on the other side revealed a look of disdain and finally replied to Gu Xiaoshang. Attack? How many people do you have? What do you think? Gu Xiaoshang laughed. Haha. The opponent laughed dryly and suddenly shouted, White Stone asking for directions. Gu Fei and Gu Xiaoshang were both startled. What kind of skill was this? They had never heard of it before. Then the 8 thieves who were standing back to back, each took out a small bag from their pocket and threw it in a few directions. The small bag suddenly opened in the air, and a burst of white dust mixed with gravel flashed out, like a white fog. Following that, a circle of thieves revealed themselves from stealth, their bodies covered in white stains. Gu Xiaoshang's mercenary group, Rainbow Cloud, was a level 4 mercenary group with 80 people. There were only 10 thieves in the group. 2 of the girls were scared when crossing the ravine in the Black Dragon mountain range and returned home. The one who went to chase after the cloaked figure had not returned yet. At this moment, there were only 7 thieves, and they were all exposed after being thrown by their opponents. This is the white lime produced in our White Stone City. You've never seen it before, right? The thief said proudly. Then he looked at the encirclement. 7 thieves, including Gu Fei and Gu Xiaoshang. There were only 9 people. They only had one more than them, so it was not much of an advantage. He could not help but laugh. You call this an encirclement? Gu Xiaoshang had already called for reinforcements from Sword of No Oath. After all, no one had expected the other side to have so many people tailing them. They thought there were only 2 or 3 people at most. Gu Xiaoshang was trying to buy time, and did not really want to fight them. What do you want? Gu Xiaoshang wanted to say a few more words. Don't waste time, let's break out. The thief ignored Gu Xiaoshang and turned to speak to his brothers. As he spoke, he sprinted towards a thief in a certain direction. The others immediately followed behind him and rushed in that direction. Gu Xiaoshang saw that the direction they were rushing towards was the weakest of the 7 thieves. He did not expect that while he was buying time, he would give them time to identify the people in the circle and pick the weakest link. This. Gu Xiaoshang turned to speak to Gu Fei, but Gu Fei was already gone. When he turned back, he saw that Gu Fei had already flashed in front of the leader of the thieves. The sword in his hand slashed out a ray of fire. The thief did not have any chance and was instantly killed. The remaining 7 were immediately stunned and stopped in their tracks. They could not help but retreat, putting some distance between them and Gu Fei. Gu Fei was also forced into a corner. If he had confirmed the identity of the other party, he could have just watched them break out of the encirclement and escape. However, these fellows refused to say what they were doing. As a responsible mercenary, Gu Fei would definitely not let them go so easily. Dark sword, black robe, instant kill, double flame flash. This was already a symbol. The 7 of them were stunned for a moment before they reacted and exclaimed, Qianli is drunk. Ha, you know me? Gu Fei said. Amazing video. They muttered. Now you know how amazing I am. Hurry up and tell us who you are, what you do, where you came from, and what are you trying to do by following us? Tell us. Gu Xiaoshang also came over. The 7 of them looked at each other, but still did not speak. Gu Fei was also in a lot of pain. Suddenly he had an idea and asked one of them, What's your name? Wild Boar. What kind of stupid name is that? Gu Xiaoshang could not help but laugh. Gu Fei was not in the mood to laugh. He hurriedly added the other party as a friend. It was hard to say it in person, but it was fine to communicate privately. In the end, the other party did not turn on the friend button. Gu Fei was really helpless and could only continue to enlighten them. Wild boar. Who are you guys looking for by following us? Or is there something else? If you're looking for someone for personal matters, just tell us the name and we'll call him over. It's not that hard. Is there a need to fight and kill? Right, Xiaoshang? Yeah. Gu Xiaoshang nodded. If that's the case, why can't we talk about it? Even if there's an enemy in our group, we can all sit down and discuss a solution. Gu Fei felt that he had reached the limit of his enlightenment. Yeah, sit down and discuss. Gu Xiaoshang also said. The 7 of them still did not speak. Gu Fei held his forehead and waved his hands. There's nothing I can do. You guys have to fend for yourselves. Don't say that I didn't help you. With that, Gu Fei retreated to the side to eat an apple. This was a hint. I can't do it now. If you want to run, do it now. Gu Fei felt that since he had already discovered them, it was equivalent to destroying their tracking. His mission as a mercenary had been accomplished. Letting them go was not considered irresponsible. In the end, they still ignored Gu Fei's hint and stood there stupidly. Gu Fei finished eating the apple and was full of mana. On the other side, Gu Xiaoshang tried to persuade her a few more times. Her cloak was picked up, but she still didn't say a word. Forget it. Gu Xiaoshang also lost his patience and waved at Gu Fei. Qianli, do it. Why do you still need me to do it? Gu Fei said in a daze. You're so powerful. If you don't do it, who will? Gu Xiaoshang said. Actually, with my mana, I can't kill all of them. Gu Fei secretly said to Gu Xiaoshang. Nonsense, you can kill more than 20 people on the video. Gu Xiaoshang said. Killing people depends on fate. Gu Fei said. What nonsense? Gu Xiaoshang said. The video specifically picked my good form, and the other side cooperated and played it. They deleted all of my pathetic looks when I didn't have enough mana. Gu Fei said. That's too much. How could they do this? Gu Xiaoshang said. Yeah, that's too irresponsible. Gu Fei said. Why don't you post an explanation? Gu Xiaoshang said. Explain? Explain what? Fake videos can't be trusted. It can't be said to be fake. It's just that they picked the good ones. That won't do, it's not real. That's true. Hey. The 2 of you. Finally, someone interrupted the conversation between the 2. What? The 2 of them turned around. Are we going to make a move? Gu Xiaoshang asked. Let's do it, everyone attacked together. Gu Xiaoshang quickly said and pointed at Gu Fei, including you. AI. Gu Fei took a deep breath and pointed his sword at them. This is your last chance. If you don't say it, we'll make a move. Everyone surrounded him, and the people in the middle were standing so closely together. Gu Fei could kill them all with a big move. This was fate. If we say it, can we really leave? Someone suddenly said. Hey. Someone immediately glared at him. I don't want to drop levels. This person jumped out from the 7 people. Chapter 317. Gu Fei and Gu Xiaoshang watched in a daze as the 7 people in front of them fought amongst themselves. The 2 of them didn't expect something like this to happen. In that instant, the 2 of them felt like they had forced a girl into prostitution, and felt a bit embarrassed. Before he could think of anything to say, the 6 thieves on the other side had already gone berserk. They shouted, You're the first one to lose a level. The 6 of them uniformly surrounded the traitor. 6 daggers were drawn at the same time, and a white light instantly appeared in the center of the circle, telling the world that traitors would not have a good ending. Then the 6 of them turned around and faced Gu Fei and Gu Xiaoshang. Their eyes didn't have the slightest hint of submission. If you want to kill me, then come at me. Who knows who will die and who will live? Forget it, you guys can leave. Gu Xiaoshang suddenly said. The 6 of them, as well as Gu Fei and Gu Xiaoshang's subordinates, were all startled. What do you mean? Gu Fei asked Gu Xiaoshang. I didn't want to make things difficult for them. I just wanted to scare them. Look, they weren't afraid, so we failed. Gu Xiaoshang said. Oh. Gu Fei shrugged and didn't say anything. Hurry up and leave. If we don't leave now, we won't make it. Gu Xiaoshang said to the six of them. The six of them were confused. Gu Fei saw their confused expressions and became angry. They were confused when he asked them something. And they were confused when he told them to leave. How could they not be confused? Gu Fei waved his sword and 2 streaks of flames appeared in the air. Hurry up and leave. If you don't leave, I'll make a move. The 6 of them continued to turn around in confusion. Gu Xiaoshang waved his hand and the 3 thieves moved to the side. At the same time, the sound of chaotic footsteps came from behind Gu Fei and Gu Xiaoshang. A large group of people was rushing over. Gu Xiaoshang anxiously stomped his feet. Hurry up. The 6 of them finally didn't have any more doubts and ran away. Gu Fei turned his head to look at the large group. The one leading them was Time's Reflection. He had brought a few dozen brothers with him. When he saw the 6 thieves running away, he hurriedly asked, "Why did they run away?" "I told you guys to hurry up, but you guys were so slow. We couldn't stop them and they ran," Gu Xiaoshang said. "Aren't there only 8 thieves? You can't even stop him for a while?" Time's Reflection was confused. "If I didn't stop him, then I didn't stop him. Why do you have so much to say?" Gu Xiaoshang was displeased. Women. He was a natural-born actor. Look at how calm Gu Xiaoshang is. Can you think of the reflection of the years she intentionally let him go? Just as Gu Fei was thinking, Time Reflection turned to him. "Brother Qianli, it's just 8 thieves. You should be able to stop them, right?" Gu Fei was startled, and Gu Xiaoshang also looked at him nervously. Gu Fei raised his eyebrows and said to Time's Reflection, "I had a stomachache just now, so I didn't stop him." In a moment of desperation, Gu Fei couldn't think of any fancy reason. It sounded like a lie. Time's Reflection glared at him fiercely. Seeing that the thieves were nowhere to be found, he turned to Gu Xiaoshang and asked, "What are they trying to do?" Gu Xiaoshang said helplessly, "They won't say it even if I beat them to death. There's nothing I can do." Sigh. Time's Reflection sighed helplessly. "Then let's go." Time's Reflection took his brothers and chased after the team as fast as he could. They were all members of reigning the world, and they would be scared if they didn't stand with the others. They always felt that the whole world was plotting against them and stopping them from completing their mission. At this moment he was not in the mood to go with Gu Fei and the others, so he rushed to catch up with the main group. After he left, Gu Xiaoshang finally let out a sigh of relief and said to Gu Fei, "Thanks." "For what?" "For your stomachache. Even though it's a lousy reason," Gu Xiaoshang said. "Lying isn't my strong point," Gu Fei said. "But aren't you very close with them? Why didn't you tell the truth?" "Even if we're close, we have to follow the rules. If they knew that I was the one who let them go, I'd have to deduct the commission. So many brothers are eating with me," Gu Xiaoshang said. They chatted as they chased after the main group. Unfortunately, they had a warrior like Gu Xiaoshang. It was easy to be left behind, but it was a bit difficult to catch up. Fortunately, the sword of the unsworn sword had taken advantage of his position and instructed the entire team to move slower, all for the sake of taking care of the girl he fancied. Gu Fei and the others were finally able to see the main group getting closer and closer. At this time, Time's Reflection had already returned to the team. Unsworn Sword greeted him and asked, "How was it?" Silvermoon stood quietly to the side, but she was actually more anxious than anyone else. "They ran away," Time's Reflection said. "When I arrived, they were already gone." "Impossible. Weren't there only 8 thieves? With Qianli drunk, there's no way they could have run away," Silvermoon said in shock. "He said his stomach hurts." Time's Reflection said helplessly, "Do you believe him?" Silvermoon looked at everyone. Everyone shook their heads. This kind of lie was the most infuriating. They knew it was fake, but there was nothing they could do about it. Why did Qianli drunk let them go? "There must be more to it than meets the eye," Silvermoon said. Silvermoon said, but in his heart, he was already certain that this group of people was most likely looking for him. Perhaps 1,000 Miles Drunk had already sold his position just now. Could it be that there were already sharpshooters lying in ambush in the surroundings, waiting to snipe him countless times? "When Xiaoshang comes back, you can ask her," Time's Reflection said to Unsworn Sword. "I'll ask her now." Unsworn Sword sent a message to Gu Xiaoshang. On the other side, Silvermoon had already subconsciously shrunk his head, trying his best to squeeze himself between the crowd. At that moment, he wished that the 3 spirit imprisoning shields in his party could protect him. Unfortunately, the 3 of them had been seconded by reigning 4Cs and were responsible for surrounding the criminal, Todd. Unsworn Sword, and the others were also afraid that some super sniper would be able to snipe them from 800 meters away. In the end, Silvermoon could only feel insecure. While Unsworn Sword was communicating with Gu Xiaoshang, Silvermoon was constantly thinking in his mind, should I run or not? If I run, where should I run to? At this time, Unsworn Sword was already announcing. Xiaoshang said that Qianli drunk is fine, but he did have a stomachache just now. He's faking it, he's definitely faking it. Silvermoon said. Unsworn Sword didn't comment. He didn't want to suspect the girl he liked. Gu Xiaoshang, who had just finished the call, snapped his fingers at Gu Fei. They're suspecting you. I told you that your reason was too lousy. But I'm your witness now, so thank me. Miss, I'm carrying this stain for you, right? Gu Fei said. Don't be so serious. You'll get a share of the commission later. Gu Xiaoshang said. Are your brothers okay with this? Gu Fei looked at the other thieves. Any objections? Gu Xiaoshang turned around. No. The others hurriedly replied. Their attitude shocked Gu Fei. He had seen all kinds of people in the game, but Gu Xiaoshang was the first guild leader he had ever seen with such an imposing aura. The others, such as Sword Without Oath, Against the Current, Twilight in the Cloud, and Silvermoon, had never acted so condescendingly in front of their own guild members. As for the rest of the group, Unsworn Sword clearly didn't want to pursue the matter any further. This left Silvermoon at a loss. There was no way a few thieves could escape from Qianli drunk. Silvermoon was certain of this. Stomachache? That was complete nonsense. This guy was purposely going easy on them, so they naturally knew each other. It seemed like they were undoubtedly in Cloud Twilight's group. They had already met face to face. Now that his location had been exposed, there was no telling if a large group of assassins would come for him. I have to run. I have to run. Silvermoon had already made up his mind. This large group could be used as a cover. If someone disappeared without a trace, no one would notice. This was a backup plan that he had already thought of. As for what to do next, let's wait until we're out of danger first. Silvermoon made up his mind. He began to pay attention to the surrounding terrain and the movements of the players around him. The group in front was just about to go around a thicket. Everyone was focused on moving forward. An opportunity. Silvermoon's footsteps were slow and orderly. As he neared the thicket, he casually walked out from the group. Then, he casually stood under a large tree that he had already observed and pretended to rummage through it. This was a very common action. Players who learn trade skills would often pick up herbs and stuff them into their bags. Since it wouldn't delay their journey, no one asked. Silvermoon's heart was beating wildly. The footsteps of the players behind him felt like they were trampling over his heart. He lowered his head and quietly looked around. Good, no one was paying attention to him. Silvermoon quickly turned around and hid behind the tree. The tree was enough to block anyone's sight. Silvermoon was very satisfied with his choice. His act of hiding behind the tree didn't attract any attention, which made him feel even more at ease. What he needed to do now was to quietly wait for the group to pass by. Then he would slip away. Where should he go next? He had to think about this question carefully. As Silvermoon pondered, the tail of the group gradually passed by him. Anyway, let's leave this place first. Silvermoon moved his body away from the tree. He looked at the path behind the tree and turned to walk into the thicket. But after taking 2 steps, he suddenly received a heavy blow to the back of his head. Silvermoon couldn't move or speak. He could only scream in his heart, "It's over." Sapping blow. Who is it? Silvermoon still had this question, but he didn't get an answer. Several attacks came from behind and killed him on the spot. At the same time, Cloud Twilight, who was outside the Whitestone Night Camp, received a message. The person has been sent back. Have fun killing. How much do you think is worth? Send it to me. Chapter 318. At this time, Cloud Twilight was personally sneaking into the knight's camp in Baishur City. He wanted to be the first cannon to kill Silvermoon. At the same time he received the news, a white light flashed in the knight's camp. Who else could it be other than Silvermoon? Silvermoon didn't know what to think, but his actions and expression didn't seem to have lost his cool. The moment he revived in the knight's camp, he began to warily look around. When Yin Zhongmu saw this, he knew that it was a big deal. He was right in front of them, but it wouldn't be that easy to kill him. If they wanted to kill him until he reached level 10, it would be a long and drawn-out battle that would consume a lot of manpower and energy. Cloud Twilight suddenly felt a bit regretful. Did they really have to delay the lives of so many people for this guy? At the same time, Gu Fei looked at Slender Waist Dance in surprise. How come you're here too? Gu Fei used almost the same method as Silvermoon to get behind the tree, but one was in the forest and the other was outside. At that time, Silvermoon never would have dreamed that the person he was most afraid of, Gu Fei, was just a tree away from him. When Silvermoon was hit by Sword Demon's sap, Gu Fei teleported behind him and gave him a fierce blow. At the same time, another person also stabbed out. It was Slender Waist Dance. Only my stealth speed can keep up with the team. Slender Waist Dance said. So you've been keeping an eye on him near Silvermoon? Gu Fei asked. Sword Demon said helplessly. There's no way around it. I'm not fast enough. Silvermoon snuck away from the team and pretended to dig for grass under the tree, hiding behind a tree when no one was paying attention. How could he know that there was a thief right next to him, staring at him? This also had to do with Sword of No Oath. In order to wait for Gu Xiaoshang, he slowed down the team's speed, and Slender Waist Dance became more and more proficient in stealth. The three of them left the forest and quickly caught up to the team. The child elite group members were at the end of the team, so they naturally knew that the three of them had completed their mission. The Slender Dancer reached out to the Han family young master and said, "Let's settle the bill." As a result, the Han family young master waved his hand away. "I haven't received the money yet. I'll settle it for you when we get to Shady Forest City." Slender Waist Dance didn't bother him, and went to look for the reborn Amethyst girls. The Han family young master announced to Gu Fei and the Sword Demon, "Silvermoon has died and returned to the Whitestone City Knight Battalion. Yin Zhongmu has seen him. The mission had been successfully completed." Clap everyone. Everyone rolled their eyes. "Keep score." Han family young master said to Sword Demon. Sword Demon took out the child elite group's score book and recorded everyone's score in this mission. Yutian Shenming and Unscathed in Battle were both a bit indignant. It was clear that the two of them didn't participate much in this mission, and only received the lowest level of friendship points. Gu Fei looked at the Sword Demon's record and couldn't help but have an opinion. Hey, Yutian and Wushang only got 10 points, which is very reasonable. Sword Demon and I personally completed the mission, so how come our score isn't as high as yours? 30 points for a setup? What kind of setup is this? Do you think we just foolishly waited for Silvermoon to leave, and then took the opportunity to give him a beating? Han family young master said. Isn't that the case? Does Silvermoon not need a reason to leave? Does Silvermoon's reason for leaving have anything to do with you? Isn't it because he's afraid that the stealthy guys behind him are targeting him? Gu Fei said. That's right. What does that have to do with you? I was the one who found those guys. Han family young master said. Gu Fei was startled. He looked at the other four and saw that they clearly knew about this situation, so they just looked at Gu Fei with a sympathetic gaze. How come I didn't know? Gu Fei mumbled. Han family young master was too lazy to pay attention to him. Brother, you patted Gu Fei. Everyone had a meeting during the day to discuss this, but you weren't there. After saying this, he turned to Sword Demon. Qianli didn't come to the meeting. Should we deduct 5 or 10 points? Logically speaking, we should deduct points, but he wasn't online at that time. This. Sword Demon hesitated. That still counts. Deduct 10 points. Han family young master announced. Deduct 10 points. Deduct 10 points. Yutian Shenming and Unscathed in Battle immediately joined in. Whether or not being offline counted as an absence was always a matter of debate, just like offside on a football field. However, With so many people supporting him, and Gu Fei himself didn't seem to have any objections, Sword Ghost happily deducted 10 points from his score. Gu Fei was still thinking about the so-called setup. Since you found them, why didn't you say anything when you knew I was going to stop them? What if I kill them all? Before you left, didn't I tell you to go easy on them if they were targeting Silver Moon? Han family young master said. How would I know if they were targeting Silver Moon? You can ask them. I did, but they wouldn't say no matter what. One of them wanted to say was killed by their own people. Gu Fei said. Han family young master was stunned. In the end, he said to the others with a pained expression, How sad. How sad. Look at the quality of the mercenaries, and then look at you guys. Each one of you says you're an expert, and each one of you forgets friendship and goes back on your word. Don't you feel ashamed? This person is crazy. Everyone looked at Han family young master with disdain. In the end, it was Brother Yu who patiently explained to Gu Fei the composition of this plan. Because Silver Moon knew that Yun Zhongmu and another group of people were coming to kill him, he would definitely be suspicious along the way. Thus, Han family young master randomly found a mercenary group in Whitestone City, and had them send some thieves to secretly follow the group at night. Originally, Han family young master wanted to use Gu Fei's anti-stealth to inform Reflection Years that someone was secretly following them and make Silver Moon suspicious. In the end, he didn't expect that they would somehow discover the people following them first. When dealing with an unknown stealth, Han family young master expected that they would find Gu Fei. He didn't expect that these guys would have such a deep grudge against Gu Fei that they didn't even look for Gu Fei, who had anti-stealth, and instead went to find Tsubasa Sakuratsuka's trap group. However, Han family young master was also prepared for this kind of situation. As long as he reminded these guys he found, then no ambush would work. In the end, Sword Without Oath and the others would still have to find Gu Fei. In the end, things went smoother than he expected. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka had a stomachache as soon as he saw Silver Moon. Gu Fei's appearance and the people Sword Without Oath and the others trusted were very much in line with what Han family young master wanted. On the contrary, the professionalism of these guys he found exceeded Han family young master's expectations. At this time, listening to Gu Fei's words made his heart palpitate. These guys actually refused to say anything even if they were beaten to death. Of course, they would die, especially if they died at the hands of Gu Fei. Not only would this not make Silver Moon so nervous that he would run away, but it would also give him a sense of security. Fortunately, in the end, they still walked in the direction that Han family young master expected. The stalkers were very obviously let go. Silver Moon became very suspicious and did not dare to stay in this team anymore. Once again, he abandoned his brothers and prepared to run away. This forced Silver Moon to run away to achieve two goals. First of all, he once again shook off his brothers, falling into Cloud Zhongmu's tiger's den alone, basically unable to obtain any outside help. He was also forced to do this. If he wanted to escape, he could not bring his group of brothers with him. For example, the 3 heavy-armored soldiers protecting Todd were probably the 3 most trusted and valued brothers of Silver Moon's mercenary group. However, if the 3 of them wanted to leave, Reigning the Four Seas would immediately know, and it would not be able to achieve the effect of stealth. Second, Child Elite Group and the others needed to secretly deal with Silver Moon. They could not even let Silver Moon know who did it. After all, this was a game. Killing someone did not mean silencing them. Even if Silver Moon died, he could still tell Unsworn Sword that they were killed by Child Elite Group, so he could not leave any evidence behind. After all, this was a more important matter. If Gu Fei used the excuse of stepping on my foot to kill someone, Unsworn Sword would definitely not turn a blind eye. Silver Moon's death was quite meaningful. The killer would not be affected in any way, and any help that Silver Moon might have received would be destroyed. He could not even ask for help from Reigning the Four Seas, because he could not explain why he left quietly. This was because he wanted to use the few hundred people of Reigning the Four Seas to resist the 4,000 people of the 10 Guilds Alliance, and then use the opportunity to escape. Next, it would be a battle of patience between Yun Zhongmu and Silver Moon. This was clearly not within the scope of Han family young master's concern. They followed the team and continued to move forward. At the same time, they sent a congratulatory message to Yin Zhongmu, waiting for the good news of you killing someone. In the end, at 22:37 at night, an hour had passed since they had killed Silver Moon and sent her back. Cloud Twilight only sent a message with a frown on his face. That bitch, he only sat in the resurrection point for an hour. Fuck him. His grandson knows that we're definitely going to stop him, so he's going to waste time with us. You guys have more people, so don't be afraid. Take your time. Good luck. Child Elite Group collectively called back to express their condolences. At this time, the advance of Cloud City's team also came to a halt. At this time, there was a boundless forest in front of them. Unsworn Sword took out the map given by the system and studied it repeatedly. Finally, he announced, Forest Shade City is in this forest. No way. There's no road? Everyone was confused. There should be. I've never heard that there's no road here. After Unsworn Sword and the others arrived at White Stone City, they received a notification that the next step was to go to Forest Shade City. Of course, they also learned about Forest Shade City immediately. It was a fact that the city was surrounded by the forest, but they did not hear that there was not even a road leading from the forest to the main city. Remember the Black Dragon Mountain Range? Reflected Years said. Why? There were originally no ditches there, but because of our mission, there were so many ditches on the road. You mean there was originally a road here, but because of our mission, the road is temporarily gone. Yeah. Fuck, the system only knows how to do these things to waste time. Everyone enter the forest. Fuck, there are coordinates. Are you afraid of getting lost? Unsworn Sword ordered. In fact, they had no choice but to enter. If they did not find Forest Shade City, would they have to spend more than 3 hours walking back to White Stone City and offline? Chapter 319. The Cloud City players rearranged their formation and stepped into the forest. Unsworn Sword continued to walk at the front, holding the guide map given by the quest, counting the coordinates as he moved forward. However, after a few steps he was stunned. He looked at the current coordinates, then looked at the Forest Shade City's coordinates on the map. Unsworn Sword hurriedly ran out of the forest, looked at the current coordinates, ran back in, looked at the coordinates again, and finally said in surprise, "This forest is a Type 2 map." The players who heard the news were stunned, and immediately began to pay attention to the coordinates. After Unsworn Sword ran back and forth in the forest, the news of a Type 2 map instantly spread among the players. Type 2 map. Gu Fei was unfamiliar with this new term. It's a map with its own independent coordinates. Brother Yu explained, but felt that it was not clear enough, so he simply gave an example. For example, a cave or a house is a Type 2 map with its own coordinates. Will the coordinates change in a house? Gu Fei was absolutely sure of this, because in his career as a wanted person, countless PK criminals were caught in houses. Gu Fei could be sure that there were no special coordinates in a house. The smaller rooms continue to use the coordinates on the big map, just simply marked. For example, are 100,100, that means it's in the room. If it's 100,100, that means it's on the roof. Didn't you notice? Brother Yu said. Oh. Gu Fei immediately understood. But the forest is actually a Type 2 map. What kind of design is this? Brother Yu muttered. In fact, Type 2 maps were not scary, but it was a measure to make it easier for the players to identify the map coordinates. But the problem was that the Forest Shade City in Unsworn Swordsman's guidance map was marked with the coordinates of a Type 1 map, which was what players usually called a Terra map. But the moment they entered the forest, the coordinates were shown with the coordinates of a Type 2 map. Everyone suspected that the system was deliberately making things difficult for them. Some quests didn't have any combat or intelligence difficulty, but because of the long journey or the long and tedious steps, players would waste a lot of time. This was a common trick in online games. Obviously, at this time, the Cloud City players attributed the current situation to this. Everyone was complaining, and some even suspected that the forest was temporarily changed to a second-tier map because of this mission, just like the mountain road in the Black Dragon Mountain Range. Stop arguing, everyone. At this time, everyone had retreated back to the outside of the forest, cursing and swearing. Unsworn Sword had no choice but to stand out and take charge of the situation. Shouting was only effective to the dozens of people in front of him. However, these dozens of people turned around and shouted to the people behind them. 1 spread to 10, 10 spread to 100, and in an instant it became a well-known piece of information. The edge of the forest quietened down. Everyone already knows what the situation is now. Let me ask, is there any friend in Forest Shade City? Unsworn Sword shouted. If he wanted to save time, he obviously needed a guide. The players whispered among themselves, but no one answered. The only comment that was slightly closer was, "Oh, there used to be, but they left later." This surprised Unsworn Sword. He did not expect that among the thousands of players, none of them had friends in Forest Shade City. Is there anyone? Is there anyone? There will be a great reward. Unsworn Sword did not give up. He originally wanted to play the friendship card, but now it became a reward. As the saying goes, there will be brave men under a great reward. At this time, Unsworn Sword did not ask for brave men. He only wanted a local. As a result, at a glance, he saw a pile of shaking heads. Unsworn Sword looked at Wind Star and Reflection of Time in a daze. The two obviously did not expect such a situation. In this case, Unsworn Sword continued, we can only rely on ourselves to find it. Does everyone want to go in and look for it now, or go back to Whitestone City to rest first and ask around? Look for it now, everyone shouted. This was nonsense. It would take more than 3 hours to go back to Whitestone City, and it would take more than 3 hours to come back tomorrow. People who were not sick would choose to go back first and come back tomorrow. That's good. Let's first lock the coordinates of Forest Shade City outside the forest, then go in a straight line. We will definitely find it. Unsworn Sword finished speaking and locked the coordinates of Forest Shade City outside the forest. Therefore, as long as they could go in a straight line, they would definitely reach Forest Shade City. Everyone was quite confident about this. After all, they were looking for such a large main city. The coordinates alone occupied n number of areas. With such a large target, even if they went a little astray in the forest, they would definitely be found. Once they thought of this, everyone stopped their previous condemnation of the forest map and valiantly entered the forest again. The rare forest with a second map was indeed extraordinary. The trees were strong and lush, and from the edge of the forest to the depths of the forest, it was equally prosperous. The team was still in the front, the mercenary group was at the back, and the child elite group was at the tail end. The reborn amethyst girls were not far from them, and Tsubasa Sakuratsuka's big hunter mercenary group was naturally not far from the girls. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka walked at this time and said to the vast forest beside him, "This place is very convenient to put a trap. There's no need to dig a hole. Just sweep the leaves and throw them, then cover them with the leaves. There won't be any flaws." As soon as he said this, someone at the front of the team screamed. In the quiet forest, this scream was so vivid. When everyone exclaimed what happened, a report came from the front. Someone stepped into a trap. Everyone's heart palpitated. One after another, they checked their feet and dug out a very deep question. Did someone accidentally step on a trap and forget to take it back, or did someone deliberately set it up? There was no answer for the time being. At the front, Sword of No Oath had already called for the so-called number 1 trap technician in Cloud City, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka, to come to the rescue. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka quickly went to the front line. "Have you started the countdown?" The first question Tsubasa Sakuratsuka asked when he arrived showed that he was an expert, and these people present were all laymen. No one thought that the countdown would start the countdown the moment they fell into the trap. Everyone was ashamed. "Let's start the countdown now," Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said to the others. He picked up a wooden stick from the ground and brushed away the leaves on the guy's feet. The leaves on the ground in the forest were very thick. Sometimes a single step would leave a hole, which was why Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said that this place was suitable for traps. A shiny trap clamp was stuck on the guy's feet. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka looked left and right. The others also held their breath, waiting for him to come to an earth-shattering conclusion. "It's a hunting trap," Tsubasa Sakuratsuka announced. Fuck. Everyone replied. So far, this was the only type of trap the lurkers knew. If it wasn't this, what else could it be? But I've never seen one like this before, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka continued. What do you mean? Sword of No Oath asked from the side. It's quite exquisite. It should be a trap of a higher level, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said as he raised his head to ask the player who was caught. Is there any damage? Just that it can't move? The player nodded. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka mumbled. Even if the level is high, it doesn't add any damage. Then there's not much point in leveling up. The player's face darkened. It seemed like Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was using him as a guinea pig for scientific research. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka's gaze turned elsewhere. Everyone's eyes followed him. Don't stop the timer. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka shouted. Everyone hurriedly looked at the guy's right foot. His right foot with the trap clamp was being stared at by everyone, and he felt very uncomfortable. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka used a wooden stick to poke at the ground. Not long after, he exerted some force with the other end of the stick, and another trap appeared. There's more. Sword of No Oath walked over and frowned. Time, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said to him. It's a trap. Sword of No Oath indicated that even though he had come over, the others were still watching his foot. Maybe there's more. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka tossed the trap down, and the stick poked somewhere else. Everyone followed his footsteps. Suddenly there was another Aya. From behind them. Everyone jumped up in fright. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was also surprised. He turned around and angrily said, Are you stupid? Didn't you see that I tossed that trap over there? You're still stepping over there. Didn't we already dismantle the trap? The player was depressed. Do we have the skill to dismantle traps now, bro? Tsubasa Sakuratsuka asked in return. The player could only feel ashamed of his lack of knowledge. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka continued to ask. Did you start the timer this time? Everyone was startled. They immediately reacted and felt ashamed again. Manners. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka criticized. The group of people swallowed their anger. There was nothing they could do. There weren't many trap players to begin with, and there were even fewer skilled ones. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was known as the #1 trap technician in Cloud City, but no one knew who was number 2. It felt like no one could compete with him for the #1 position. The other high-level archers had all changed classes to marksmen. Sakurazuka Tsuzum poked and poked, and in a short while he picked out another trap. His gaze became deep. It can't be such a coincidence that all 3 of them forgot about the traps here. This was purposely set up. Perhaps it was targeted at us. Who is it? Is it a player or an NPC? Reflection of Years asked. Haha, I'm done. The first person who fell into the trap had already escaped. 1 minute and 1 second. Without waiting for Tsubasa Sakuratsuka to ask, the timer had already reported the time. Including the time I forgot before, it's at least 1 minute and 10 seconds. Quite impressive. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka exclaimed. Also, it should be a player. If it was an NPC, wouldn't it have shown up already? Tsubasa Sakuratsuka looked around. Chapter 320. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka continued to pick through the fallen leaves as he said to Unsworn Sword. If it's an expert, the traps wouldn't be so simple. The ones hidden under the leaves might just be to attract our attention. Perhaps there's an even more powerful trap hidden deeper in the ground. An even more powerful trap? What is that? Unsworn Sword asked anxiously. A hunting trap that lasts longer, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka replied. Unsworn Sword really wanted to slap this guy to death. Everyone, watch your step. Unsworn Sword turned around to remind everyone. However, this didn't need to be said. Ever since the first person stepped into the trap and screamed, everyone had long since started paying attention to their feet. Can we still move forward? Unsworn Sword asked Tsubasa Sakuratsuka. The trap itself isn't harmful, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka replied. Sakura Tsutomo replied. Its purpose is to restrict movement. As you can see, it can last for more than a minute. After that, the ranged classes will attack. This is currently the main strategy used in conjunction with traps. If we recklessly move forward without understanding the situation, no matter how many people there are, we will only be eaten away. Can't we find all the traps? Unsworn Sword looked at the wooden stick in Tsubasa Sakuratsuka's hand. In theory, yes. But don't forget, traps are dead, but people are alive. A true trap expert won't just lay down traps and wait for the rabbit to come. When you step into a trap, the trap will be restricting you. When you don't, it will be a kind of restraint. While you're bitterly searching for the trap, you've already fallen into their trap. They naturally have a way to deal with it. I know. Unsworn Sword took a deep breath. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was really too long-winded. Even if he didn't really understand traps, he was still able to understand the principles behind them. That's why I said that the key isn't how many traps there are, but how many people are controlling them. How many people are waiting for us to step out of their trap? Tsubasa Sakuratsuka's voice became deeper as he spoke. After he finished speaking, he looked around with a profound gaze. There was only a slight rustling of leaves in the forest. Coupled with Tsubasa Sakuratsuka's tone, everyone couldn't help but feel a chill. They looked around, searching for the profound question of how many people there were. Let's stop advancing for now. Call the guild leaders over and discuss our countermeasures, Unsworn Sword announced. At this moment, at the end of the line, all the players were waiting for news from the front, chatting in twos and threes. Suddenly, Gu Fei turned around and shouted, "Someone's here." Who is it? It wasn't just the child elite group. Gu Fei's voice had also been heard by Unsworn Sword, who was at the forefront of the Dalian team. Gu Fei looked at the forest behind them warily. Someone was there just now. Is it a person or an NPC? Brother, you said. It's a person. An NPC wouldn't have a murderous aura, Gu Fei said. Murderous aura. Everyone looked at Gu Fei with a strange expression. I'll go take a look. Gu Fei pulled out his sword and carefully walked in the direction of the murderous aura. The feeling just now was fleeting. Based on his experience, the other party should have noticed Gu Fei in that instant. Gu Fei couldn't point out the specific direction, but he was sure that there was someone there. I'll go with you. Sword Demon also pulled out his dagger and entered stealth. He followed beside Gu Fei and carefully walked in that direction. Behind them, everyone was watching. Not long after, Unsworn Sword and the others, who were at the front of the line, came over and asked, "What's going on?" A player pointed at Gu Fei's figure in the forest. He said there's someone behind him. Is it a player or an NPC? Reflection of Years asked. Everyone's expression was strange. The Han clan's young master sighed and said, "Damn it, can't the question be more creative?" Reflection of Years' expression was unhappy. Han family young master hurriedly smiled at him. "Sorry, I'm not targeting you." Reflection of Years' expression softened, but Han family young master added, "It's targeting everyone, including you." Everyone, including Reflection of Years, was so angry that their noses were crooked. "Be careful." Gu Fei, who was searching, suddenly shouted. Then everyone saw Gu Fei's body lean back and quickly jump. At the same time, the dark streak sword in his right hand slashed down. With a ding, there seemed to be a flash of light at Gu Fei's feet. Then they saw Gu Fei land steadily and say in a low voice, "There's a trap." Tsubasa Sakuratsuka hurriedly ran over and saw that there was an activated trap at Gu Fei's feet. It was even more exquisite than what they had seen at the front of the line. There was even a faint flash of metal. Under normal circumstances, two teeth that would normally clamp a person's feet were tightly clenched together, making people shudder. Sword Demon, who was on the side, came out of stealth. Gu Fei's "be careful" was of course for him to hear. At this time, Gu Fei also had lingering fears. This trap is really sick. It can even chase and bounce. But it was obvious that everyone looked at Gu Fei as if they were looking at a sick person. Just now, it was clear that Gu Fei had stepped into the trap and immediately retracted his feet to dodge it. However, this trap could actually jump from the ground and chase after him for a short period of time. So Gu Fei's longsword instantly slashed down and cut down the trap that had jumped up. It was obvious who was the sick one here. "Brother Zui, you're too ridiculous. You can even dodge that." Even Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was not in the mood to study his favorite trap for a moment. Gu Fei didn't answer him. He continued to look into the depths of the forest and said, "I'm afraid there are more." At this time, Unsworn Sword and the others had already come over. The first thing Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said was, "Have you started the timer?" "What timer?" The trap time," Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said. "Didn't you miss?" "Even if you missed, you still activated it. Once activated, the trap will only disappear after the time limit is up. You can still use the timer. You guys should really study up on your trap knowledge." Tsubasa Sakuratsuka's face was full of resentment. The guild leader of Reigning the Four Seas, Unsworn Sword, was speechless. However, he also noticed a problem. This time, everyone had clearly arrived at the same time and saw the trap being activated. Why did this brat still blame them when he didn't know the timer? Wasn't he just using it as a pretext? How despicable. Unsworn Sword thought to himself. This trap is even stronger than the one before, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said, and according to Brother Zue, it can even bounce up. This should be the effect of the higher the mastery of the skill. This means that its bounce is even more terrifying. What about your trap? What's the speed of your trap? Unsworn Sword suddenly asked. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka smiled bitterly. Mine isn't even as good as the one before. I dropped a level when I was level 40. Below level 40, a player would learn a new skill every 6 levels. For example, level 12, level 18, and so on. With the addition of level 40, these levels were known as skill levels. Normally, when a player died and dropped a level, the most terrifying thing was to drop below the skill level. This was because skills below the skill level would disappear. When a player reached the skill level, they would have to learn the skill again and practice it again. Dropping skill level was a more terrifying threat to the players than dropping a level. It seems that we've been surrounded. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka crouched down and looked at the trap for a while, then stood up and said, this was a conclusion that anyone with a brain would have already reached. The place that Gu Fei had gone to was the place that the 1,000 of them had just walked past. It was obvious that the trap had only been placed after they had walked past it. Perhaps the moment that Gu Fei noticed it, it was also the moment that the other party had secretly placed the trap and left. There was no doubt that this trap was definitely targeted at them. Is it a player or an NPC? Is it a player or an NPC? Reflection of Years was still struggling with this question. It's a player. Gu Fei answered him with certainty. How do you know? Someone had told him, but he still needed more accurate evidence, especially when the person who spoke was Gu Fei. Gu Fei shrugged. I saw it. It was better not to mention the murderous aura. If he said too much, these players would act like the students in his school and treat Gu Fei, who claimed to know martial arts, as a problem. Saw it? You can tell at a glance whether it's a player or an NPC. There are so many NPCs in the city. Which one of them looks any different from a player? Hey, where are you going? I'm not done yet. While Reflection of Years was talking, Gu Fei teleported and disappeared. What do we do? The 3 core members of Reigning the Four Seas gathered together again, along with the leaders of the various mercenary groups. The ones that were sent to search around have also found the trap. We are now surrounded by a large trap formation. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka explained the situation. His mercenary group had always been in charge of the trap exploration work. Sworn Sword was very pleased that they had hired this mercenary group that was widely known to be very wretched. It was finally of great use. Can't we get rid of all the traps? Someone asked. No. Sworn Sword stopped Tsubasa Sakuratsuka in time and started his long trap theory. Why? But the person who asked this question wanted to get to the bottom of it, so Tsubasa Sakuratsuka went on with another long speech. Sword of No Oath forced himself to hold back. His eyes swept across the crowd, wanting to say a few words to emphasize the seriousness of the current situation. But after looking around, he suddenly had a little doubt. After looking around again, he could confirm his doubt. He looked at Reflection of Years and asked, Where's Silvermoon? This was a meeting between the core members of Reigning the Four Seas and the mercenary group leaders. All the leaders had arrived, but Silvermoon was nowhere to be seen. Reflection of Years had only called out to the group leader once, and it was only now that he realized that someone had not arrived. He had to admit that Silvermoon's concealment of his existence was quite successful. Only at this special moment did people realize that he had been gone for a long time. "Where is he?" Sworn Sword muttered, preparing to privately contact Silvermoon. "He left," someone suddenly said. Chapter 321. The person who spoke was the most taciturn among the mercenary group leaders, but everyone was looking forward to interacting with her. The leader of Amethyst's mercenary group, Luoluo. The leader of Amethyst's mercenary group was July. Usually the leader of the mercenary group would be the leader of the mercenary group. However, there were exceptions. For example, the leader of 4C's mercenary group was Reflection of Years. Amethyst's mercenary group was also an exception. Luoluo was the leader of the mercenary group. There were only 2 girls in the leadership class. One was Luoluo, and the other was Gu Xiaoshang. However, Luoluo was obviously more sophisticated than Gu Xiaoshang, because her mercenary group was made up of girls. If a player wanted to build an immortal harem in the game, it would be very valuable to have a good relationship with the leader of a group of girls. It was a pity that Luoluo was very quiet during the meetings. She listened quietly to everyone's words, and no one could find a chance to build a relationship with her. This was because Luoluo was very clear that there was only one reason for their mercenary group to be invited: Slender Waist Dance. If it wasn't for this strong person, their mercenary group's strength was basically at the lower end of Cloud City. The only special thing about them was that they were all girls. However, if this was also a reason for being invited, then they basically had the dirty thoughts of comfort women. According to Luoluo's intentions, Slender Waist Dance could be called to this kind of commander's meeting. Unfortunately, every time Slender Waist Dance was called for a meeting, no one knew where she was playing. This girl was too casual. At this moment, when it came to the problem of Silvermoon's disappearance, Luoluo suddenly threw out her first sentence in the meeting. "Oh." Unsworn Sword did not dare to be negligent. He quickly asked, "Where did he go?" "I don't know." Luoluo shook her head. "We saw him running under the tree to dig the grass, and then when no one was looking, he hid behind the tree. After that, we didn't see him come back." "What was he doing?" Unsworn Sword was confused. "I don't know. Didn't you guys ask him to do something?" Luoluo asked. "No." Unsworn Sword was very puzzled. He grumbled, "Why didn't you tell me you were leaving?" But he still sent a message to Silvermoon in dissatisfaction. While everyone was confused, the Han family young master was smiling gently. Luoluo also sent him a message. "Is that all?" "That's enough," Han family young master replied. "What's next?" Luoluo asked. "Next, if no one takes the initiative to hypothesize, I'll have to do it myself." As soon as the Han family young master sent this message back, a mercenary group leader jumped out. Could it be that Silvermoon is behind all this? Silvermoon said that he died in Whitestone City. Unsworn Sword frowned. It had been a long time since Silvermoon had died. While he was sitting in meditation with Cloud Twilight and the others, he had already come up with a script for how to deal with the brothers he had abandoned, and how to use them to dominate the world. He was preparing to write a heroic legend of not wanting to drag his brothers and friends down with him, because of his personal grudge. Only in this way could his lonely situation turn for the better, and he could get out of his predicament. To do this, he couldn't take the initiative. He had made a sacrifice for his brothers, but the next second, he informed everyone about it. No matter how you looked at it, he was just playing to the gallery. Therefore he had to wait. When they realized that he was missing and anxiously came to ask, he would say a few simple words to make his image look good. Therefore, during this period of time, Silvermoon had been thinking about how to make his image look good without revealing any flaws. At the same time, he was also anxious. Damn it, why hasn't anyone noticed that I'm missing? At this time, someone finally noticed, but it was not the right time. The more chaotic the situation, the more opportunities there would be. Unfortunately, Silvermoon didn't know the situation here at all, but the Han family young master saw everything. Therefore, a very malicious plan to smear his name was formed. Silvermoon quietly left, and he came up with a beautiful explanation. And the Han family young master, combined with the current situation, also gave him an explanation. What was worse was that until now, the Han family young master hadn't said a word. He just made full use of all the resources that had happened, so someone was naturally led to say what he wanted to say. Silvermoon's quiet departure had something to do with the current situation. Silvermoon's plan was to retreat in order to advance, but the problem was that he had retreated, but no one followed him. After he very casually said to Unsworn Sword, "Sorry, I'm dead." Unsworn Sword didn't reply to him. Silvermoon was really anxious. Why didn't this Unsworn Sword ask, "Why did I die?" Of course, he didn't know that at this time. Whether he died or not was not within the scope of Unsworn Sword's concern. He was also thinking about the relationship between Silvermoon's departure and the current predicament. There was also a dispute between the group leaders present. The positive side thought that Silvermoon must have something to do with this, while the negative side thought that he should have nothing to do with it. The reason was that Silvermoon's brothers in his mercenary group were still there. Abandoning his brothers and running away, it's not the first time, someone said coldly. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka. The Han family young master was really very satisfied. He didn't need to say anything. How did you know? Someone asked Tsubasa Sakuratsuka. Everyone present didn't have a deep relationship with Silvermoon, so when someone asked about his past misdeeds, he would use the same excuse he gave in the dungeon, which made everyone sigh and sympathize with him. How would I know? Tsubasa Sakuratsuka sneered. Didn't you ask around when you passed by Moonlit Night City? Who doesn't know about that place? Everyone was stunned. They didn't have a special relationship with Silvermoon, so who would specifically ask about Silvermoon when passing by Moonlit Night City? Therefore, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka added oil and vinegar to his story. With his wretchedness, the amount of oil and vinegar he added was quite high. Silvermoon was practically the world's most evil person since ancient times, and the most disgusting part of his story was that he abandoned his wife and smeared the dirt on her. Gu Xiaoshang was the first to jump up. Without Silvermoon, he had nowhere to vent his anger, so he could only point the spearhead at Unsworn Sword. Fuck, why did you find such trash? Are all the people in Cloud City dead? Why did you have to find such a person? I didn't know before. Unsworn Sword smiled bitterly. Poor Silvermoon was still sitting alone in the knight's camp in Baishur City, waiting for Unsworn Sword to ask about his death. The Han family young master finally opened his mouth at this time. It's not certain whether Silvermoon was involved in this or not. Maybe he just felt danger and wanted to escape, but was stopped and killed. This was what it meant to advance by retreating. This kind of crime didn't seem as serious as Silvermoon's ambush, but the problem was that this wasn't Silvermoon's doing, and it wasn't within the Han family young master's control. He couldn't bear the responsibility of framing Silvermoon. Therefore, he took a step back and pointed out that Silvermoon was just afraid of death and wanted to escape. Although this crime wasn't serious, it was very real. Silvermoon's character had been portrayed to the extreme, and the Han family young master's goal had finally been achieved. Even if he succeeded in framing Silvermoon for the ambush, it would only help Silvermoon make more enemies. This wasn't necessary, because Yin Zhongmu and his group were enough to deal with him. But now, by using this as a pretext, Silvermoon's character was exposed to everyone at a very suitable time. When everyone calmed down and thought about it, they realized that in the end, there was only one topic about Silvermoon. He was trash and nothing else. And this was what the Han family young master needed. At this point, all of Silvermoon's hopes had been cut off. Unsworn Sword replied to Silvermoon, died. Silvermoon, who had been waiting for a long time, was overjoyed, but he still pretended to be calm. Nothing. Oh, he died quite far away, right? Yes, where's the night camp? Silvermoon said calmly, but in his heart he was screaming. Hurry up and ask me why I'm still in the night camp after being dead for so long. In the end, Unsworn Sword's reply was even colder. It's getting late, just in time to go to bed. Silvermoon was dumbfounded. Unfortunately, he didn't have the chance to take the initiative to attack. This was the disadvantage of advancing by retreating. What he didn't know was that after Unsworn Sword said this, he had already deleted him as a friend. When he came up with another plan, A stranger wouldn't be able to contact the leader of Cloud City. Ahem. After Unsworn Sword finished dealing with this, he realized that everyone was still looking down on Silvermoon's character. He felt that his conversation with Silvermoon was really beautiful, and he couldn't help but join in the disdain. Hey. Finally, Reflection Years couldn't help but say, "Stop talking about that trash, okay? How are we going to get out now?" Ahem. Everyone came back to their senses. Continuing to waste our time and energy, we have to get out of the forest as soon as possible, Reflection Years said. Of course, everyone thought. Who didn't know this? So, Reflection Years was just about to reveal his plan when he suddenly heard a scream from the group of players. Who the fuck stepped into a trap this time? Unsworn Sword stood up and looked over. Rogue. Rogue is next to us. There was a commotion from the group of players. Are they going to attack already? All the group leaders were excited and stood up. They weren't afraid of a head-on confrontation. They were worried that the other side would throw a trap to wear them down. Now that they were attacking, this was good, really. Chapter 322. All the regiment commanders stood up from where they were sitting and returned to their teams with heroic postures. On the way back, they had already pulled out their weapons and shouted for their members to quickly gather around them to defend against the enemy. But when they returned to their teams, they only saw chaos in the crowd but no enemies. Where are they? Where are they? The group leaders rushed to ask their subordinates. They suddenly appeared, killed 2 people, and ran away. Someone described. Why didn't we chase? The group leaders asked. We chased them. Everyone pointed in a certain direction. There, 3 players were alone in the bushes under a tree. Of course, they weren't posing there. They were trapped in a trap and couldn't move. However, the trap was nothing more than a harmless hunting trap. The expressions on the trio's faces were extremely exaggerated, because the ground beneath their feet was still emitting sparks. 1,000-layered flames of the cinder tree. The group leaders, who were all experts, immediately recognized it. What happened? One of the group leaders asked. 4 thieves suddenly appeared, killed the 2 players in the outer circle, and immediately ran away. Everyone was in a hurry to chase them, and accidentally fell into the trap. Then we saw the mage's flames ignite. There were 8 people who chased after them, but now only 3 are left. The group leaders understood. No wonder the 3 who were standing there were all warriors. They survived because they had higher health. The other 5 who were sacrificed were probably classes with low health. At this time, the priest was maintaining his distance and healing the 3 warriors. The 3 of them were also nervously looking around, afraid that the flames would rise again. In the end, the enemy didn't attack or show up. They let the traps under the 3 warriors' feet expire and hurriedly returned to their teams. The forest returned to peace. The enemy had launched a wave of attacks in a short period of time, taking away the levels of 7 players from Cloud City. 4 of the 7 were members of Reigning the 4 Seas. They had already returned to the faraway Cloud City and quit this mission. The other 3 mercenary group members had also returned to Whitestone City. It would take at least 3 hours for them to rush here. Everyone, be careful around you, Unsworn Sword shouted. Everyone waved their weapons in the air to see if there were any thieves approaching them. There were even mages who started a carpet bombing around them. After confirming that there were no more thieves, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Just because there wasn't one now didn't mean there wouldn't be one in the future. No matter how many people there were, they couldn't do anything about a thief's stealth. They couldn't just let the mages keep bombarding them with spells, right? Unsworn Sword gritted his teeth so hard that they were about to shatter. He said to Time's Reflection, "Find Qianli and get drunk." Currently, only this one was known to be able to perform anti-stealth. Gu Fei came forward again. Sword of No Oath's expression was one of respect. "Brother Qianli, I'll have to rely on you this time." Of course, Gu Fei knew what they wanted him to do. However, his methods had many limitations. At this moment, he sighed at Unsworn Sword and said, "Guild leader Unsworn, I can only guard one direction at most. It's impossible for me to take care of everything." "Why?" Unsworn Sword asked. "My brother Zue knows Kung Fu, and he plays with killing intent. Fireball, who happened to be in the group, said smugly. Who's causing trouble? Drag him away. Unsworn Sword called for 2 warriors to throw Fireball away. Seeing that no one believed him, Gu Fei racked his brain and changed the concept of an explanation. This is a passive skill. It will only react when the other party notices me. Let's take this for example. I'm standing in the middle of the crowd. If there are thieves in stealth outside, they won't be able to see me, and I won't know of their existence. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Oh, everyone sighed. You brat. You're revealing your secret so easily. Time's reflection thought to himself. He had even started to think about how to get rid of a person without paying attention to him. This seemed like a challenge. Time's reflection pondered. If that's the case, as long as Brother Qianli occupies a higher position than us, won't he be noticed by people outside the circle? Unsworn Sword suddenly said. As expected of the leader of the number 1 guild in Cloud City, his level of intelligence was quite high. Gu Fei smiled bitterly and shook his head. Leader Unsworn, are you trying to make a circle with me as the center? Sorry, my skills range isn't that big. It's at most 10 meters. It's impossible to take care of over 1,000 people. If that's the case, you can't even take care of one side. Unsworn Sword's face was ashen. To be precise, it's like this. Gu Fei was regretful. He understood the situation at hand and was willing to do his part, but the problem was that there was nothing he could do. Just as everyone was feeling helpless, a sudden shout came from the side. Fuck, here they come again. Everyone turned around and saw 2 flashes of white light in the direction of the voice. Another 4 thieves approached in stealth. They suddenly appeared and quickly killed 2 people, then turned and ran. With the previous example, no one dared to give chase this time. The mage's spells, the archer's arrows, and other long-range attacks all chased after them. But these 4 thieves seemed to be very familiar with this line of work. After one attack, they quickly scattered in all directions. In just a few steps, they had already stepped behind a tree and disappeared. At this point, the mages and archers who were ready to attack had just gotten into position. They hadn't remembered their chant yet, and hadn't even drawn their arrows yet. Fuck. Just as everyone was feeling indignant about this, suddenly, a ring of fire flashed in the sky, and the ground also glowed and heated up. Aha! Everyone screamed and scattered in all directions. This was a large area of effect spell from the mages. The 1,000-man team was in a mess. Players collided with each other. When someone fell, someone else dared to step on them. Screams filled the entire forest. Unsworn Sword kept yelling, "Steady, steady, steady." As a result, a warrior who was dodging the spells happened to dodge into their small circle, which was not affected by the spells, and bumped into Unsworn Sword's back. Unsworn Sword almost bit his tongue off. He turned around and glared at them, but no one was in the mood to pay attention to him. They all looked at the situation in front of them in horror. The spells had already been activated, and there was a sea of fire all around. Some were directly killed by the spell attack, while others were heavily injured by their own people in the chaos. Wasn't that right? In order to avoid the sudden attack, many warriors used charge to dodge. This skill wasn't just used to attack. It was also used by warriors when they were dodging or running at high speed. But in the current chaotic situation, there was no guarantee that a charge would just happen to hit someone's butt. Some were directly pushed into the sea of fire, some were knocked into the depths of the forest and never came back. Most of them entered a stunned state and fell to the ground without any reaction. Many people suddenly felt pain in their feet while running, and they could no longer move. Seeing that they had fallen into a trap, they were all dumbfounded. Why is there a trap here too? Everyone didn't forget that the traps surrounded them while they were dodging, and in the end, some people still stepped into them. The child elite group had always been at the bottom of the team, so they were also in the periphery when they formed a team. And the sudden spell attack just now mainly touched the periphery, and their position was also rewarded by the spell attack. With the experience and skills of these elite fighters, it was not too difficult for them to dodge the attack. However, it was obvious that their panicked companions were much more terrifying than the wave of spells. The young master of the Han family was unfortunately knocked down by the warrior when he was trying to escape. Fortunately, The chance of being stunned didn't happen to him. Relying on his exquisite priest skills, he sat on the ground and endured the fire attack from the sky and the ground. Sword Demon and Yutian Shenming also quickly stepped in and dragged him out of the 1,000 layers of flames of the Sync Tree. If they didn't hurry up and pull him out, the possibility of him being trampled to death by his own people was much higher than being burned to death. As the 5-second duration of the 1,000 layers of flames of the Sync Tree ended, the flames gradually extinguished. Mages' fire spells usually wouldn't cause a fire in places like the forest, mainly because the fire started quickly and extinguished even faster. If it wasn't for the 5-second duration of the 1,000 layers of flames of the Sync Tree, the Skyfall Flaming Wheel alone would leave almost no burn marks. However, the 5 seconds of continuous burning did ignite some of the drier leaves on the ground, but after a few sparks, they were extinguished into a wisp of smoke. The players in the Cloud City were all covered in dust, and they were in a sorry state. Some people's panicked footsteps had yet to stop. Unsworn Sword was careful not to be knocked into as he continued to shout, "Calm down, all leaders, please manage your own party members." But mercenary groups at most had no more than 100 people. How could the difficulty of management compare to reigning the 4 Seas' 750 people? At this moment, the most chaotic party was actually his reigning the 4 Seas. Even at this time, the leaders still didn't forget to look at Unsworn Sword with disdain. Gu Fei had already returned to find his companions. "Are you guys okay?" Everyone looked at the Han family young master. He was the one who almost died. The Han family young master, on the other hand, had a face full of regret as he looked at the debris where he fell. "It's a pity about that bottle of wine, I just took it out." "What's going on?" Gu Fei looked around. "There's a mage sneaking up to us. We didn't even notice a single one. These guys are very familiar with PK in the forest, and they're also very familiar with the terrain here," said the Han family young master. "We're in big trouble." Chapter 323. At this point, almost everyone had forgotten that they were here for a quest. In the face of disaster, everyone was thinking about how to get out of this dangerous situation. The Han family young master's prediction about this temporary army was gradually coming true. Deserters appeared in various mercenary groups, mainly thieves. After using stealth, they carefully moved out of the forest. As long as they didn't step into the traps, it wasn't difficult to escape. Unfortunately, the thieves who ran in all directions didn't know how to scream. Their figures were revealed, and they couldn't move an inch. In the end, they stepped into the traps. As for the mages who were hiding somewhere, they instantly activated their skills. Flames sprayed in all directions, killing the deserters one by one. Not only did these players die, they died in an awkward manner. The moment they stepped into the traps, their intention to escape was exposed. Dying one level was only temporary, but it was inevitable that they would be looked down upon. Many people had just revived in the White Stone Thieves Guild when they received a system notification that they had been kicked out of the mercenary group. The mercenary group leaders who had deserted were embarrassed. They felt that everyone was looking down on them. In reality, everyone was in danger. No one was in the mood to care about this. Under the leadership of Reflection Years, the mercenary groups and players from Reigning the Seas quickly stood in a large circle, with the warriors and priests at the outer perimeter. With the support of these two classes with high HP, it wasn't difficult for them to withstand the bombardment from the mages. At the same time, the results of the headcount were quickly produced. Unsworn Sword's face was ashen. They had lost a total of 217 people in this short period of chaos. Among them, there were more than 100 from Reigning. This was the most serious blow they had suffered so far. At this point, the number of Reigning members who were still on the quest barely reached 600. The forest was silent again. Everyone held their breath and looked in front of them. With such organized defense, the enemy didn't have a chance to launch another sneak attack. However, this alone wasn't enough to satisfy the players of Cloud City. Right now, they needed to break out of the encirclement and escape. But in a situation where they didn't even know where the enemy was, they were at their wits' end. "Who is it? Show yourself if you have the guts." Unsworn Sword was obviously going crazy. A laugh came from the forest in response to Unsworn Sword. Everyone turned their heads to look in that direction. Reflection Years shouted anxiously, "Don't be careless. Keep your eyes on your own direction." Everyone suddenly turned their heads back. Some people even twisted their necks in a hurry. The pressure was too great, and their muscles were tense. "Who is it? Step forward and say something." Unsworn Sword roared. As a warrior, he also set an example and stood at the very edge of the circle. And at the absolute core of the circle was the corrupt Todd. Indeed, a person came out of the forest, but he was a little further away from everyone. The forest was dark, so his appearance could not be seen clearly, but he seemed to be smiling. At this moment he raised his arms and waved to everyone, shouting, "Hello everyone! Shady Tree City welcomes everyone." Everyone gritted their teeth. Some of the players heard that the voice came from another direction. They really wanted to go over and see who it was, but they were afraid that it was just a distraction. So they didn't dare to move. They kept a close eye on the area in front of them while listening to the conversation behind them. "Who are you?" As the chief of the dragons, Unsworn Sword needed to speak to the other party directly. Now that they were in this direction, the two of them faced each other from afar. The other party did not answer this question, but instead asked, "How does the trap taste?" It was undeniable that although it was the mages and rogues who caused direct damage to the players in Cloud City, it was the traps that played a leading role in this trap. Because of the existence of the trap net, everyone had to be careful with every step they took, and they had no choice but to become turtles in a jar. It's nothing. Unsworn Sword was full of resentment towards the traps and did not answer for a while. In the end, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka, the trap expert, overstepped his authority and answered for him. But after he said this, even his own people looked askance at him. It was nothing, but he trapped everyone here. Wasn't this lying through his teeth? The other party laughed and asked, "Your Excellency, you are?" Tsubasa Sakuratsuka had already jumped to Unsworn Sword's side when he spoke just now. At this time he patted his chest and replied, "My name is Tsubasa Sakuratsuka, the #1 trap technician in Cloud City. If you have the guts, fight me one-on-one." Unfortunately, the name Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was more than cute, but it was not imposing at all. Although he said such a sentence very arrogantly, he immediately introduced himself, which dragged down the momentum of the whole sentence. The group of scoundrels in his group who never took their leader seriously immediately began to laugh at him. "Ha ha ha, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka is showing off again." The person on the other side also laughed and said, "The #1 in Cloud City is so powerful? But I'm sorry, I'm the #1 trap technician in the parallel world." "Who are you?" Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said. "Water Depth." The noise gradually became louder. Because this name was not ordinary. It was the symbol of one of the most powerful 5 rogues in the parallel world. Although many players completed their level increase during the match, and level 41 was not exclusive to the 5 rogues, from the experience ranking in the game, the top 5 on the overall ranking were still these 5 people. The archer in the top 5 of the overall ranking was naturally at the top of the archer experience ranking. If he changed his class to lurker, then it was not too much to call himself the #1 trap technician in the parallel world. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was obviously a little embarrassed and said, "High level doesn't mean good skills." This was no longer shouted, but said to the people around him. As a result, he was mercilessly laughed at by his group of brothers. "Give it up, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka. What do you mean by there's always a higher mountain? Remember to keep a low profile in the future." "All of you shut the fuck up," Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said angrily, then shouted at Water Depth. "Water Depth, right? Come and fight me one-on-one. Let's see who's the #1 trap technician in the parallel world. Hee, if you can walk up to me safe and sound, I'll admit that you're the #1 trap technician." Water Depth laughed. Water Depth was more than 30 meters away from them, so there must have been traps along the way for him to dare to show up so openly. Unsworn Sword was also aware of this, otherwise he would have found a few thieves to sneak over and take him down. However, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka's trap level was indeed not bad, and Water Depth's words were a little. Aren't these words a little too arrogant? Tsubasa Sakuratsuka voiced out Unsworn Sword's thoughts. Then I'll give it a try. Go ahead. Water Depth made an inviting gesture. Okay, just you wait. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka looking around, and finally broke off a branch that was more than 2 meters long. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka held it with both hands and said coldly, "Then I'm coming." Water Depth had no choice but to invite him again. Ah! Tsubasa Sakuratsuka shouted, stuck the branch into the ground, and began to carefully look for traps with his butt in the air. Everyone fainted. This was really too wretched. Just by looking at this temperament, everyone had already come to a conclusion as to who was more suitable to be called number one. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka's skill was not fake. In just a moment, he had already picked out 3 traps, some hidden under leaves, and some buried in the ground. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was very proud of himself, thinking that there was nothing more than this kind of trick in laying traps. How could this kind of insignificant skill stop me? This guy is so arrogant, there's probably something wrong with his head. As Tsubasa Sakuratsuka thought, he had already picked out the 5th trap. He threw the 5 traps in one place, preparing to use them as a disgrace card to humiliate Deep Sea. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka looked up. He had just walked 5 meters, and the first 2 meters didn't have any traps, but after 3 meters he found 5 in a row. And this was only on the path that Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was walking on. He reckoned that there were definitely traps around him as well. Just how many spies did this guy bring? Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was about to continue exploring, when the players in Cloud City behind him suddenly shouted, "Watch out!" Tsubasa Sakuratsuka turned around in confusion, only to see 2 thieves faintly appearing behind him. Fuck, how despicable. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka cursed. Ah! You only use the traps as traps, but aren't the ambushing thieves also traps? As the number 1 expert, your trap awareness is too shallow. Today, I'll teach you a lesson. Go back and think about it. Water Depth laughed. How despicable. None of the players in Cloud City expected something like this to happen. It was already too late to save him, unless someone or an attack could reach Tsubasa Sakuratsuka without any delay. And Cloud City just so happened to have such a person. Teleportation was a movement that didn't have time. A distance of 5 meters was just right. Just when the 2 thieves thought that they had succeeded, a black figure suddenly appeared behind them. This time, it was Water Depth's turn to shout, "Watch out!" But all he saw was a huge V-shaped torch flash past, and the 2 thieves were instantly killed. Brother Zue. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was so excited that he was about to cry. This was what it meant to be a brother. Looking at his brothers, they were all smiling and enjoying his defeat, while casually knocking their arrows and preparing to do their best. How sad. Hurry up and go back. Gu Fei patted Tsubasa Sakuratsuka. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka also felt danger. At this moment, the ground was hot, and the top of his head was flashing. This was a sign that the sorcerer was about to act. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka hurriedly threw away the broken tree stick in his hand and ran back. But before the stick could fall to the ground, it was caught by Gu Fei. Chapter 324. Gu Fei quickly tested the hardness of the branch, and was very satisfied. He immediately put the sword into his pocket, and with both hands on the wooden stick he was immediately propped up in mid-air. The 1,000 layers flame of the cinder tree on the ground had already ignited, but because Gu Fei was in mid-air, he wasn't burned. Although the heavenly fire wheel in the sky hit his head, it wasn't a serious injury. As a mage, Gu Fei's mana was a disgrace, but his health was even more outstanding than other mages. He had a freakish equipment like Wind Chaser's Blessing. At this time, the crowd was already exclaiming, "Wow, you can do that!" As a result, Gu Fei's performance wasn't over yet. The moment he was in mid-air, he took out a long rope from his pocket. With a wave of his arm, the rope flew at a 45-degree angle toward the tree branch above, firmly entangling itself somewhere. At this time, the wooden stick that was temporarily supporting him was about to fall. Gu Fei just happened to abandon the wooden stick and swing with the rope. At the same time, he quickly climbed up the rope. Gu Fei knew that if he didn't grab the high point, he would definitely be thrown to the ground when the rope reached the lowest point. These few movements were extremely smooth. The crowd shouted again. You can do that? Are you doing acrobatics? Gu Fei was very unhappy as he swung in the air. Was this acrobatics? This was kung fu. There was an ancient saying that there were 18 types of martial arts. In fact, these 18 were imaginary. With the progress of the dynasties, there were different versions of these 18. But according to the overall classification, it was nothing more than projectile weapons, long weapons, short weapons, soft weapons, and plain weapons. These categories were further subdivided, and each could be classified into 18 types of weapons. So it was impossible to be proficient in everything. Moreover, strange weapons like the wolf-tooth mace, the primordial hammer, and the meteor hammer had never been studied by any martial arts practitioner. For example, bows and arrows were something that Gu Fei hadn't dabbled in at all. Let's not talk about that for now. Just the trick that Gu Fei was using right now was real kung fu. This was a lasso type of soft weapon. If you asked an acrobat to do 2 swings, it would definitely be more thrilling and beautiful than Gu Fei's, but when it came to swinging the rope around a tree, Gu Fei was more confident. Gu Fei's inner qualities were all there, but the crowd didn't know how to appreciate it. This made Gu Fei very depressed again. But whether it was kung fu or acrobatics, everyone present was stunned by Gu Fei's actions. Not only his own people, but also the water 25 meters away. It was not until Gu Fei grabbed the rope and was about to fly in front of him that he came to his senses. If you wanted to be a great professional archer player, the most important thing was to never give people a chance to get close to you. Although Depp's class was a lurker, the characteristics of the class were still there. At this moment, he didn't want to stay and fight, so he turned around to hide behind a tree. As long as he could get out of his opponent's line of sight, Shueishan was confident that he could shake off any pursuers. To use a vulgar expression, he had grown up in this forest, and knew it very well. Unfortunately, Gu Fei wouldn't give him the chance. He pointed in the air and quickly chanted, "Wall of electricity, descend." The wall of electricity instantly gathered in front of Depth. If he was even half a beat slower, he would have crashed into it. By the time he stopped and turned around to take a detour, Gu Fei, who wasn't slow at all, had already flown to his side. Gu Fei slashed at his face with his sword, then followed up with a sweeping kick to try and take down Shui Mingshui. He didn't expect that at the critical moment, Depth of Water would suddenly jump forward, and this sweep actually missed. When Gu Fei used kung fu, he couldn't control how much damage he could deal, but it was extremely rare for him to miss. Depth actually dodged what he thought was a surefire hit, which surprised him. Gu Fei didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly chased after him. Depth's movement speed might be higher than his, but as long as the distance between the two of them was within 5 meters, Gu Fei wouldn't miss a second time. As he was planning, he suddenly felt a slight tremble under his feet. Gu Fei cursed in his heart and quickly retreated. There's a trap here. Gu Fei instantly understood why Depth had dodged his kick. That guy wasn't trying to deal with it, but because he knew there was a trap here, he jumped to jump over it. In the end, he just happened to let Gu Fei's kick pass. Gu Fei dodged as soon as he touched the trap. His reaction speed had already reached the peak of perfection. Gu Fei reckoned that if this was a trap in real life, he probably wouldn't have triggered it with his quick reaction speed. After all, to trigger a trap required a certain amount of strength. Unfortunately, this was a game. Triggering a trap didn't have that many physical principles. No matter how much strength you had, it would activate as soon as you touched it. What's more, this trap that Tsubasa Sakuratsuka mentioned was even more ferocious. With a flick, it would jump up and clamp onto you. However, compared to the last time, Gu Fei was prepared. In the time it took for him to dodge backwards, he had already raised his sword and was much faster than the last time. Depth, who was preparing to escape, was known as the #1 trap technician in the parallel world. He was naturally skilled in traps. Just now, his ears had caught a light sound that sounded like a spring behind him, and he immediately knew that a trap had been triggered. Who else could it be other than Gu Fei chasing after him? He didn't expect this guy to fall for it so quickly. Depth was still thinking that his dodging the trap was too obvious, and might have alerted someone. He didn't expect this guy to be fast, but his brain wasn't. As Deepwater thought this, he was overjoyed as he turned around to look. In the end, he heard the sound of the spring getting closer and closer, and saw something very familiar flying in front of him. Before Deepwater could even scream, there was a paw sound, ending the sound of the spring. Wahahaha! Tsubasa Sakuratsuka had turned around to look at Gufei's movements as soon as he ran out of the spell's range. He was closer than the others and could see more clearly. At this time, he was almost rolling on the ground. He pointed at Depth and laughed wildly. As expected of the #1 trap technician, to be able to fucking clamp the trap on your nose, I admit that I'm not as good as you. Depth's face was already covered in tears. He couldn't help but cry uncontrollably. If anyone didn't believe him, they could take a clip and clamp it on their own nose. What made Depth even more angry was that he couldn't move. The trap didn't clamp onto his feet, but his nose. The effect of the trap was also to stop him from moving. Even he, the #1 trap technician, didn't know about this, because no one had ever thought that something like this would happen. This is a bug. Depth thought in grief and indignation. Gufei was also quite surprised that this happened. He originally wanted to throw the trap at Depth's head, but he didn't think that Depth would turn around and send his nose up. He didn't think that clamping his nose would have the same effect as clamping his feet. The trap would only fall off when the time limit was up. This was a system rule. A shameless rule that couldn't be changed by humans. Therefore, Depth could only let the trap hang on his nose. It looked very funny, and any self-respecting expert would want to die at this time. Thus, when Gufei approached him with the dark streamer sword in hand, he even hoped that Gufei would walk a little faster, so that he could quickly kill him. But when Gufei walked up to him, he didn't rush to swing his sword. Instead, he reached into his pocket and searched for something. Could it be an even crueler tool? Depth was about to open his mouth to protest, but he saw that Gufei had already taken something out of his pocket. It was an apple, and he began to chomp down on it while asking, "How does it feel?" An extreme teleportation, a dual flame flash, and an extreme electric wall. This was Gufei's limit. At this time, he couldn't use any powerful skills. Humph. Deepwater had wanted to make that sound, but she didn't want her nose to be pinched, so the sound went off somewhere. Depth could only open his mouth and say, "You better kill me quickly, but it's useless. Even if you kill me, you won't be able to leave this forest, and I'll be back soon." Tui Tui. Depth's Tui wasn't directed at Gufei. Think about it. The trap was buried in the ground, so there was a lot of mud on it. At this time, it was hanging on his nose and hanging in front of his mouth. When he opened his mouth, a lot of mud fell into his mouth, making the situation even more awkward. Haha. Gufei laughed. He ate half of the apple before throwing it away. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a coil of rope, saying, "Why should I kill you?" As he said this, he suddenly waved his right arm, and the tip of his sword slashed out with a V-shaped flame. Two thieves appeared out of thin air, dead. "Tell your brothers not to come over. Stealth is useless against me," Gufei said. Depth was very surprised. He knew that his thief brothers were using stealth to get close to Gufei, but even he didn't know when they would make their move. He didn't think that Gufei would know better than him, and with a wave of his hand he killed two more. Gufei could still sense that there were thieves in stealth watching him, but they had clearly stopped approaching. As a result, Gufei went behind Water Depth, lowered his body, and wrapped the rope around Water Depth's leg. Fuck. Water Depth already knew what Gufei was going to do. Even though he couldn't move his lower body, he could still move his upper body. He bent down to try and stop Gufei, but unfortunately, Gufei had already finished tying the knot, and in a flash he had already left his side. The other end of the rope was tied to Gufei's fire baptism, and as he swung it he yelled, "Catch! It's coming!" Zhan Wuxiang responded and left the team. He caught the flame baptism that was thrown at him. "Drag it back," Gufei ordered. "Got it." Unscathed in battle waved his arm. "Fuck your ancestors." Water Depth roared, but the rope around his ankle had already been pulled taut. A huge force came from his leg, and Water Depth fell to the ground. Chapter 325. Zhan Wuxiang's strength was immense. The things he threw out were always many times faster than he could move himself. Right now, it was naturally not a problem for him to drag someone along. Shui had just been dragged to the ground when he was immediately dragged back. This time, the expert water depth couldn't care less about his pride and shouted, "Save me!" There were many mages, thieves and archers hiding behind the trees. How could they not save water depth when he was screaming so miserably? The thieves rushed over to pull him back. The archers shot arrows to break the rope. The mages tried to burn the rope. And some mages tried to use ice whirlwind to slow down water depth's movement. However, they didn't consider that water depth was moving passively. To slow him down, they would have to use ice whirlwind on the caster, unscathed in battle. In short, there were all sorts of methods, but none of them were effective. First of all, shooting the rope. How could a normal person achieve this level of archery? To achieve this, one would need to be an expert archer in real life. And with the help of the in-game system, only then would one be able to achieve this level of skill. The mage's fireball was like the heavenly fire wheel. It was impossible to cause a fire in the forest. When the fireball hit the target, it was instantly extinguished. There seemed to be burnt marks left on the rope. Perhaps the durability had decreased, but water depth was only being dragged for a mere 30 meters, so it wasn't a big problem. The thieves were even more pitiful. Gu Fei was currently running behind water depth, and the three thieves that rushed over could only disappear in a flash of fire. Water depth on the ground was screaming nonstop. The ground was full of traps, and as he slid and rolled, who knew how many he triggered? Behind him, Gu Fei could only watch as the number of traps on his body increased. It was a sight to behold. Even more mages, thieves, and archers appeared from behind the trees, wanting to help. Meanwhile, the players of Cloud City, who had only been enjoying Gu Fei's stunning performance, finally reacted. Unsworn Sword gave a loud shout, and reflected time arrived with the most well-trained archer corps of the four seas, instantly raining down arrows. Shui was sliding on the ground with his face facing upwards. Seeing the arrows flying past him in an orderly manner, he was also very surprised. This was a specialty product of the four seas, and it wasn't something that could be found everywhere. The rescuers who had rashly revealed themselves were hit by this wave of violent attacks. More than 10 people were killed on the spot, and the rest basically returned with arrows. What was even worse was that he had exposed his position this time. No matter which tree he hid behind, he would be under the watchful eyes of these sharpshooters. Arrows were cheap and plentiful, so archers wouldn't feel the pinch when using them. Now that they couldn't see anyone, they didn't want to stop. After holding back for so long, they finally had an outlet to vent their anger. They didn't stop shooting at all, and the trees that they were hiding in looked like they were being shot by a machine gun. Those who were in a better position and were more familiar with the forest could still find the blind spots between the trees to escape, but most of them could only lean against the trees, not daring to show even a finger. At this time, water depth was sliding all the way until he was finally dragged back into the formation by Unscathed in Battle. Under the cover of Unscathed in Battle's arrow formation, Gu Fei wasn't harassed anymore, and he returned smoothly, receiving complicated looks from all sides. "Brother Zue is too awesome, my idol." Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was the first to compliment him. Gu Fei smiled. He was already used to this kind of thing. Then, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka lowered his head and smiled at Water Depth, who was still on the ground. "You're my idol too, as expected of the #1 trap technician. You're fully equipped now. Ha 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 ha." Water Depth was both pained and angry. At this time his whole body was covered in trap clips. Even on his head, other than the original one on his nose, there were 3 more. 2 on his hair, 1 on his ear, and the rest on his arms, legs, chest, and back were all densely covered. This made Unsworn Sword angry. "You son of a bitch, you set so many traps in a mere 30 meters, you're a scammer." The other players were also engaged in a heated discussion. "Does the trap effect stack?" Unscathed in Battle asked. "I don't think so." Brother Yu replied. "It'd be amazing if it did. So many traps. When the fuck will we be able to use them?" Unscathed in Battle said. TSK, to have a chance to be caught by so many traps at the same time, and all over the body, what an honor." Yutian Shiming sighed. On the other hand, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was happy for a while, but suddenly became angry. Damn, why can only the system record, but we don't even have the ability to take pictures? The mention of cameras reminded Water Depth. He turned to look at Gu Fei, and after sizing him up he said, "You're the video mage from Cloud City? Hehe, now you know fear." Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was proud, as if he was the one who pulled Water Depth back. Water Depth didn't pay attention to him, but after hearing the confirmation he sighed. "You really are amazing. Thank you." Gu Fei always maintained the humility of a qualified martial artist. To outsiders, this was extremely pretentious. What made people even more jealous was that this was something that could only be done with real skills. At this moment there was a clack sound. The first trap on Water Depth's nose had reached its time, and automatically slid off, leaving a cute red nose on Water Depth's face. The other traps were all caught in a flash, but the one on Water Depth's nose was like a starter. Not long after it fell, Water Depth's entire body started to fall off. TSK. The discussion started again. This is also a different kind of peerless beauty. Yutian Shenming continued to admire Water Depth from before. Those who are good at water drown. Those who are good at riding fall. Wise words, wise words. Brother, you seem to have learned something from this. When the last trap fell off his body, Water Depth let out a long breath and slowly climbed up from the ground. One of his ankles was still tied by a rope, but he didn't seem to care at all. He stood up straight and patted the dust off his body. Instead, he looked at the busy archers of the four seas and nodded in praise. Not bad at archery. Damn it, still pretending to be handsome. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka rolled up his sleeves and was about to come up and beat someone up when he suddenly heard a clack sound. He looked down in disbelief. A trap was stuck on his ankle, and he couldn't move at all. Ha 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 ha. Water Depth laughed loudly. Who's the #1 trapper? Now you're convinced. Everyone looked at the trap on Tsubasa Sakuratsuka's foot in shock. At this time, he had already walked in front of Water Depth. The trap couldn't restrict the movement of his upper body, so if he wanted to, he could still throw a punch. However, he really couldn't throw a punch, because what had just happened made him feel horrified. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was very proud of his trapping skills, but he didn't notice when Water Depth had set another trap on the ground. Although no one would have thought that Water Depth would still be in the mood to throw traps at a time like this, at such a close distance, no one would have noticed it even if they didn't pay attention. What kind of trick did this guy use? Although Unsworn Sword was also surprised by this, he didn't really care. What he cared about was his quest. At this time he looked at Water Depth with bright eyes. Water Depth, is it? Let's have a good talk. Water Depth chuckled. There's nothing to talk about. This is an online game, and capturing the ringleader first isn't a good idea. Although I'm in your hands now, I can still command my brothers to continue to use tactics against you. Moreover, if I die, I'll only lose 1 level at most. That's nothing. I don't have any value as a hostage at all. Water Depth spoke frankly with assurance, then turned his head towards Gu Fei, who was standing quietly on the side. I really don't understand. What's the point of you spending so much effort to capture me? Gu Fei shook his head and said, let's talk business first. When you're free, come find me for revenge. Also, I want to point out one thing. Capturing you was very easy, no effort at all. Tisik. Water Depth continued to be indifferent, his expression like a dead pig not afraid of boiling water as he turned back to Unsworn Sword. Don't worry, you guys definitely won't be able to escape. In this kind of situation, we have the right time, the right place and the right people, so the smartest thing to do is to hand him over. That way we can avoid fighting. You're good, I'm good, everyone's good. Don't even think about it. Unsworn Sword directly interrupted. As everyone can see, I've given you a chance, but your boss isn't willing, so there's nothing I can do. Shueishin spread his hands and said to the people around him. After that he looked at Gu Fei and said, go and persuade him, persuade him. As an outsider he obviously didn't know the relationship between Gu Fei and Unsworn Sword. He only thought that a person with such skills must have a high status in the guild. At this time someone in the crowd said coldly, although this is a game, it's not that easy to die. That's right, hang this guy up and beat him up. Water Depp's attitude had already angered the crowd, and at this time, someone bent down to pick up the rope that was tied to his leg. However, this guy still didn't care. He laughed and said, "Brother, are you stupid? Who doesn't get scratched a few hundred times by monsters every day? If you can't even endure this little bit of pain, why would you play a game that needs to be played?" This was definitely true. This simulation game didn't have a realistic pain system. Otherwise, who would be able to endure the pain of being stabbed every day in a combat-based game? Coupled with the bad things that happened in the early stages of the game had gone through a major revision. No matter how much you hit, there was a limit to the amount of pain you could feel. And for someone with a bit of willpower, it wasn't hard to endure. Torture seemed to be useless, but the wretched Tsubasa Sakuratsuka had an idea. He jumped out and shouted, "Hit his dick 100 times." Cough. Some righteous people were already embarrassed. Don't forget that there were many girls around. Why were Tsubasa Sakuratsuka and his team in this direction? Wasn't it because the reborn Amethyst girls were also here? Watch your manners. Gu-Fei patted Tsubasa Sakuratsuka. Butterfly knot, cough. There's a topic that has to be emphasized. Many readers in the book reviews and replies mentioned that Gu-Fei came to the game to practice martial arts. Comrades, this is a misunderstanding. Please reread the first chapter of the book 100 times. I didn't point out in any place that Gu-Fei entered the game to practice martial arts. I thought the first few chapters had made it very clear that the main purpose of Gu-Fei's game was to use martial arts. At most, it was to practice martial arts in the process. This is the main plot of the book, so let me be clear again. Gu-Fei's purpose in the game is to use martial arts. Chapter 326. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka's suggestion was indeed wretched, and many of the surrounding players felt embarrassed for him. But wretched methods always worked. Didn't Depp's expression change after hearing this, and he couldn't help but shiver? Even so, he quickly adjusted himself and comforted himself. Don't worry, it's impossible. The system has restrictions. The system did indeed have this restriction, and it had been adjusted when it was first reforged after the violent incident. So in the parallel world, it was fine to strip naked and expose one's private parts, but there was a technical barrier if one wanted to commit rape. But don't think that you could be a free pervert and expose your private parts just like that. The system would monitor such perverted actions closely. This was much easier than the police catching thieves in real life. As long as the system found out, the player's account would be destroyed immediately, and the player's identity would be blacklisted. The game company also reserved the right to sue the player. Once you received a complaint from other players, your trouble would move from virtual to real. So since the game was released, other than the first day when it was still immature, nothing like this had happened. At this time, Depp kept using these rules to cheer himself up, maintaining a state of nonchalance. Looking at the players surrounding him, it was clear that they were at their wits' end, and Depp revealed a satisfied smile. Unsworn Sword couldn't take it anymore. He swung his fist at Depp's face, and the players behind him quickly moved aside to make a path. Depp was sent flying. The sword of no oath that was tied to his leg had already been taken from Zhang Wuxiang. Now he was personally holding it in his hand. After sending it flying into the water, he quickly pulled it back. Depp wiped the corner of his mouth and sneered. "It doesn't hurt at all." He stood up and glared at Unsworn Sword. "But I'll remember this punch. You're still threatening me." Unsworn Sword was furious, and he wanted to punch again. But suddenly, two hands landed on his shoulders, and they said the same thing. "Forget it." Unsworn Sword stopped and looked left and right. On his left was Gu-Fei, and on his right was Drifting. The two of them were also looking at each other. Obviously, they were surprised that the other had come out to stop them. Gu-Fei had been there the whole time, but Drifting had just come out of the crowd. Deepwater squinted at him and smiled. "You're the one, Drifting. What's going on? Wandering to Cloud City?" Drifting nodded. "I didn't know when you came to this city." "It's been a while," said Deepwater. Everyone looked at this and that. Unsworn Sword wanted to ask Drifting why he didn't say anything when he knew someone in Forest Shade City, but their conversation quickly answered the question. Drifting didn't know the depth of the water in Forest Shade City. Although Drifting was one of the 5 strongest sorcerers, he was the most ordinary kind. Under such circumstances, it was impossible for him to stand on the periphery like Gu Fei. Gu Fei managed to capture one of them alive in no time at all. Only the players in this area had witnessed it with their own eyes. The others had only heard about it from word of mouth. While discussing it, they continued to pay close attention to the direction they were monitoring. When Drifting heard Water Depth's name, he left his region and came over. "Are you friends?" Unsworn Sword frowned and looked at Drifting. There were pros and cons to everything. They were friends. On the bright side, perhaps Water Depth would let them go as a favor. On the negative side, of course, because of Drifting, it wasn't convenient for him to make things difficult for Water Depth. However, today wasn't a lucky day. Drifting replied indifferently, sort of. From his tone, it was obvious that they weren't friends. On the other side, Water Depth saw through Unsworn Sword's thoughts and sneered. "It doesn't matter how close a friend is. I have a bunch of brothers following me. I can't just answer to myself." Unsworn Sword wanted to wave his fist again, but Gu Fei stopped him. "Forget it. There's no point in hitting him. It won't solve anything other than venting your anger." This brother has some brains. Water Depth had a good impression of Gu Fei. "Let's think of a way to break out first. This guy is useless. Just kill him," Gu Fei continued. "Damn, you're so cruel." His impression of Drifting went downhill. Unsworn Sword thought for a moment and glanced at Water Depth. This guy looks like he's quite loyal. Since he's so worried for his brother, shouldn't his brother owe him a favor? Pull him to the front and threaten him. Childish, really childish. It was within his expectations that he would run away. "Our guild has an agreement. We can't give up on the interests of the entire team for anyone, including myself. If you don't believe me, you can try." Water Depth was calm. "Go." Unsworn Sword waved his hand. However, Gu Fei was beside him. He ignored him and turned to leave. Obviously, he didn't want to do this. Water Depth saw this and laughed. "This brother has character. I admire you." Unsworn Sword ordered Gu Fei around. If he didn't obey, he would lose face. However, he couldn't do anything. He could only call a few of his brothers to do it. Before leaving, he tied Water Depth up a few more times. Unsworn Sword gripped the end of the rope tightly and allowed him to be taken away. At this time, Reflection of Years was still commanding the arrow formation to shoot. After Water Depth was brought to the front and back, the firepower was temporarily extinguished. Reigning the Four Seas began to shout according to their boss's orders. "People in the forest, listen up. Your boss is in our hands. Immediately put down your weapons, disarm the traps, and leave the forest. Otherwise, go to the revival point and pick up your boss." After shouting once, there was no response. "One more time." 10 seconds. Unsworn Sword said. "Count my ass. If you want to kill him, then hurry up. Stop wasting time. I can tell that your guild has no future." Water Depth was impatient. Unsworn Sword ignored him and personally came to the front. "People in the forest, listen up. I'm going to count to 3. If you don't do as we said, I'll cut down your boss first. Now let's play again. I'm going to start counting." From the looks of it, Unsworn Sword was getting impatient. Just a moment ago, he had said tens of seconds, but now he had changed it to 3 seconds. 1. Unsworn Sword roared. No response. 2. He shouted again. Still no response. Unsworn Sword had already slowly raised his great sword. 3. With a shout, the sword of no oath swung down. He wasn't trying to scare them. He didn't have much hope in this method. He was just trying it out in a desperate situation. Since it didn't work, he would just kill Depth. Either way, whether Depth died or not, killing him would be a good way to vent his anger and boost their morale. Wait! Just as the sword was about to hit, a voice came from the forest. Unsworn Sword's eyes lit up. However, he didn't stop his sword. This was just a normal attack. The sword of Unsworn was not strong enough to insta-kill an opponent with a normal attack. Initially, Zhang Xian had wanted to slash a few more times, But now that the other party had finally spoken, he decided to stop. Who said wait? Depth was the first to get angry. A person came out from behind a tree. He looked like a mage. He glanced at Depth, who was being held up by Unsworn Sword by the back of his collar. His expression was one of pain. Finally, he turned to Unsworn Sword. Let's disarm the trap and let him go. Are you fucking drunk? What's our deal? Depth roared. Why do you care about me? That person didn't even look at him. He only looked at Unsworn Sword. Unsworn Sword smiled victoriously. How loyal. What a group of good brothers. After the quest is over, we might be able to become friends. Please. Unsworn Sword gestured. The mage waved his hand. A few archers came out from behind the tree and started disarming the trap. Their movements showed that they were very skilled. Unsworn Sword looked around. His gaze was extremely cold. He coldly said, "The trap I'm talking about is all of them." The mage didn't say anything, but it was obvious that he had sent a message in the channel. Not long after, countless archers came out from behind the trees and started disarming the trap. The sheer number of archers shocked the players in Cloud City. Not counting those whose line of sight was blocked, there should be at least 200 of them, right? Reigning the Four Seas had already done their best to develop their guild. Currently, they were only level 5 with 750 members. They believed that the other side was only at this level. Under such circumstances, there were actually more than 200 archers, and all of them were lurkers. Wasn't this class balance a bit too ridiculous? And looking at how busy they were, it seemed that each of them had set more than one trap. Could it be that each lurker could only set one trap? While everyone was in awe, these lurkers had already finished what they were doing. They disarmed the trap and stood to the side, quietly watching the players in Cloud City. The mage looked at Unsworn Sword and said, "All right, let them go." Idiots. You bunch of idiots. Depth seemed to be angry and touched by his brother's help. He buried his head and kept muttering. Yuzai, go take a look. Unsworn Sword gestured. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka nodded and walked forward. After a careful inspection, he turned around and nodded. No traps. Unsworn Sword was very satisfied. This feeling of victory was too good. He couldn't help but want to show off his style again. He smiled at the other side and said, I still need to find out which direction Forest Shade City should go. That way. The mage pointed in a direction. This direction happened to be the direction Tsubasa Sakuratsuka had just checked. Unsworn Sword nodded in relief. Thank you. In a good mood, Unsworn Sword's style was even more impressive. After a polite reply, he said, When we leave, we will naturally release Brother Depth. After saying that, he adjusted the team and was ready to move in that direction. Unexpectedly, someone suddenly walked out from the group and lazily waved his hand, saying, Wait. Chapter 327. A priest who always reeked of alcohol, who looked like a woman but was actually a man. Who else could it be other than the Han family young master? At this time, the team had only just started moving forward when the Han family young master stepped out to block the front of the line, immediately stopping them. This guy leisurely walked to where Sword of Vow and the others were and said with a smile, Childish, very childish. What do you mean by that? Unsworn Sword was in a good mood, and the Han family young master suddenly came out to criticize him, which made him extremely unhappy. I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about him. The Han family young master pointed at Shui Shen. Shui Shen was walking beside Sword Without Oath. The rope that tied him up was still tightly held in Sword Without Oath's hand. Sword Without Oath looked at him, only to see that Shui Shen's nonchalant expression had finally disappeared, and he was staring straight at the Han family young master, his face full of shock. Acting? The young master of the Han clan dragged out his words and pointed at the water. But this little trick of yours might be able to fool others, but it's still too inexperienced for me. What's going on? Sword Without Oath was a little confused. It's all an act. The Han family young master looked at Sword Without Oath, his eyes full of drunkenness. It really made people wonder if this guy was talking nonsense after drinking too much. But Sword Without Oath had to ask again. What do you mean? He said something that you should believe. The Han family young master said. What is it? Their guild will never sacrifice the interests of the whole for a single person. Not even for him, the guild leader. The Han family young master said. This unsworn sword looked around, only to see the shadows of the ambushers hiding behind the trees again. If we continue forward, there will definitely be a big ambush. Maybe a big ambush that will wipe us out. The Han family young master smiled. You mean to say that they are only pretending to let us go because of the depth of the water, so that we will let down our guard, and then set up a bigger ambush to eliminate us in one fell swoop? Unsworn Sword was surprised. That's right. From the moment he was captured, they no longer cared about Shueishan's life or death. Everything was just an act, Han family young master said as he looked at Shueishan. How could this be? Unsworn Sword was still in disbelief. But the strongest actor is still brother Shui. The scoundrels he came over to play successfully provoked and enticed you. Don't you think you'd be letting yourself down if you don't make good use of this hateful guy? The Han family young master continued to smile. Oh. Sort of no oath. At the same time, he emphasized many times that he had no value as a hostage. After hearing such words so many times, you can't help but wonder if this guy really can't be used as a hostage. Then you found out that they are a very loyal group, so you thought that even though the falling flowers have no intentions, the flowing water might have feelings. Since you didn't lose anything, you might as well give it a try. After giving it a try, of course you felt good in your heart. But unfortunately you completely fell into his trap. The Han family young master said. Oh. Sword of No Oath still didn't say anything, but his expression was getting uglier and uglier. On the other hand, Gu Fei, who had been standing at the side, heard that the Han family young master had clearly seen through the opponent's intentions, but still had to say it sarcastically and mockingly. This Sword of No Oath couldn't do anything to him, and would most likely tear Shueishan to pieces. He hurriedly said, You really talk a lot, why didn't you say so earlier? Didn't I say it already? The Han family young master shrugged. Gu Fei suspected that this guy had purposely waited for this moment. Sword of No Oath was so pleased with himself that he almost couldn't control himself, and fiercely kicked people down from the clouds to hell. This guy had this kind of bad taste. Gu Fei thought. I didn't think you would be here too. Shueishan suddenly said, Where's the sword demon? When these words came out, everyone was shocked. They didn't think that Shueishan, the Han family young master, and the sword demon knew each other. And from their tone, their relationship was probably much closer than Drifting's. When Sword of No Oath heard that they were friends again, he immediately felt depressed. Why was it so hard to vent his anger today? The sword demon also came out from the crowd, and stood beside the Han family young master. He nodded toward Shueishan and said, Here. You two. Why are you two in someone else's guild? Shueishan was very confused. We're a mercenary group now, hired by someone. Sword demon said. Oh. Shueishan let out a long sigh. I was wondering why there were so many people. I thought the guild was huge. So many of them are mercenaries, right? Fuck, if you're from the guild, then put on your guild badge. Can't you have some guild spirit? Can you? Sword of No Oath couldn't take it anymore. He cursed and rushed over. He first looked at the Han family young master and the sword demon and said coldly, Han brothers, sword demon brother, this guy is now our guild's enemy. If I kill him, you won't have any objections, right? In the end, the two of them nodded and said, Of course. The surrounding people were all confused. Was this a friend or an enemy? Shueishan didn't care at all. He stood up, and his expression returned to being nonchalant. He looked at the Han family young master and the sword demon and said, You two can't run away. The Priest Academy and the Thief Guild will pick you two up, and we'll drink together tonight. He then pointed at the Han family young master. Sword demons on me. You'll pay for your own. I advise you not to block the way. Otherwise, you'll probably drop 2 levels tonight. Han family young master said indifferently. Hey, let's wait and see. Shueishan said to the two of them, and then looked at Sword of No Oath with an extremely disdainful expression. Why aren't you doing anything? Can you change your garrulous, naggy, sloppy and unromantic style? Unromantic? The crowd was confused. Hee, I just said it casually. Shueishan's smile was still bright even when he was about to die. Go die. Sword of No Oath only felt that if he didn't die, this guy would definitely die from anger. He swung the great sword in his hand down. Unexpectedly, a flame suddenly appeared beside Shueishan. Shueishan also turned his head in surprise. It was Gu Fei who had dealt with him. A white light flashed, and Shueishan disappeared. Sword of No Oath / missed. He looked at Gu Fei angrily. What are you doing? I'm cleaner. Gu Fei nodded and said calmly. Sword of No Oath's teeth were about to break, but he couldn't say a single word. The people from the child elite group didn't care about him. Gu Fei scratched his head and asked the two of them, Are you two old friends? Of course. We're veterans of the game. How could we not have a few friends? Do you think they're all like you? Noobs. Han family young master said disdainfully. Everyone was sweating like a waterfall. Currently, the most famous and widely known mage in the game, with videos as proof, was being called a noob. This was too shocking. Luckily, Gu Fei was an honest person. If you called him a noob, he would probably beat you up so badly that your mother wouldn't recognize you. As for calling him a noob in the game, he would admit it in his heart. However, since it was said by the Han family young master, he had to refute it no matter what. He calmly said, Watch your words. You should know that I have the urge to cut you up. Fuck. Han family young master's expression changed slightly. He took out a bottle of alcohol from his pocket and walked away. Everyone stood there, reminiscing for a long time. After a while, they came back to reality. Immediately, a problem that had been bothering them for a long time rose up in their heads. What do we do? What do we do? Everyone looked toward Sword of No Oath. Sword of No Oath was feeling extremely depressed. Originally, killing Shueishan could have helped him out, but in the end, it was taken by Gu Fei who didn't know what was good for him. At this moment, he had nowhere to vent his anger. He wanted to kick everyone he saw. In the end, so many people didn't know what to do. They all looked at him with pitiful expressions. He immediately became angry. Fuck, let's go, let's fight them. Calm down, calm down. Reflected Years hurriedly said. Fengxing also comforted him. These bastards, I'll teach them a lesson sooner or later. Sword of No Oath clenched his teeth. As for how many people this bunch of bastards actually included, it was up to everyone to figure it out for themselves, so there was no need to ask. Let's think of a way. Reflected Years said. What do you have in mind? Sword of No Oath asked him. I'm still thinking. I originally knew their situation, but they must have rearranged their formation just now. I don't know what their current formation is. Reflected Years said. Doesn't that Tsubasa Sakuratsuka know how to find traps? Doesn't Qianli know how to use anti-stealth when he's drunk? Tell the two of them to go together and find all the traps. Sword of No Oath said. They took out the traps just now. This time, it might not be a trap, right? Reflected Years said. If it's not a trap, then what are we afraid of? Charge. Sword of No Oath said. Calm down, calm down. Reflected Years saw that Sword of No Oath wasn't in the mood to discuss serious matters, so he dragged him to the side and sat down. You rest for a bit. I'll go discuss with someone else. After saying this, he slipped away. Sword of No Oath's state was too dangerous. It was better not to get close. Reflected Years looked for someone to discuss with. He called a few people in his guild who could come up with ideas and gathered the leaders of the major guilds to discuss. Now that everyone knew what had happened, apart from feeling lucky that they had almost fallen into a trap, they were also afraid of the other side's methods. At this moment, everyone was in low spirits. Yuazai, did they set up another trap? Reflected Years asked. Just now, under the cover of the crisscrossing 4C's arrow formation, these guys from the Great Hunt had investigated their surroundings again. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka's face was like a bitter gourd. They did it again. The situation seems to be the same as before. I really don't get it. How did they manage to do it without us knowing? Chapter 328. The Han family young master smiled and said, "That should be easy to understand. If they can trap us once without us knowing, why can't they trap us a second time?" Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was startled, but when he thought about it, it really did make sense. The Han family young master looked around and said, "This kind of terrain is too suitable for lurkers. There are only 1,000 of us, and no one is hiding. Aren't there a lot of things we can't see from here, because our line of sight is blocked?" Everyone nodded. Reflection Time looked at the Han family young master. "Do you have any ideas, Han brothers?" "The hardest thing to deal with right now is, of course, these traps. As long as we can find a way to get rid of them, we won't be afraid of a chaotic battle," said the Han family young master. Of course. Although no one said it, it was clearly written on everyone's faces. The Han family young master took a sip from the bottle and continued, "I've thought of a way to set up traps, but I don't know if anyone is willing to do it." "What way?" Reflection Time asked eagerly. The Han family young master smiled. "Human mind clearing." Everyone was startled, but they quickly reacted because just now, Water Depth had put on a good show of human mind clearing. However, this method treated people as tools. It was a problem whether or not players would be willing to sacrifice themselves for justice. For example, Water Depth's body was covered in traps. The pain wasn't scary, but what was scary was the sorry state of having 4 trap clips hanging from his head. Humans were creatures that cared a lot about their reputation, and many people viewed their reputation as more important than their lives. Moreover, in a game where life wasn't worth anything, more players would rather be suicide bombers than be a mind-clearing machine that used themselves as bait. Han family's young master's idea came out, but it was completely silent. After a moment of silence, there was another flash of light among the group of players. It was obvious that the enemy mage had used the cover of the forest to sneak out and bombard them again. This time, the players of Cloud City were prepared. The mages who suddenly appeared were discovered. The archers, mages, and other ranged players quickly opened fire. However, the enemy mages only showed their heads for a moment before retreating, sacrificing only a few people. The players in Cloud City were having a hard time. There were traps everywhere, and they had nowhere to run. The crowd was once again pushing and shoving each other, and there were countless casualties. Seeing that he couldn't delay any longer, Time finally said, "The Han brothers' idea seems feasible. Then, how about your mercenary group carry it out?" Han family young master smiled. "Then you have to discuss with them directly. Anyway, I won't do it." Everyone turned to look at him. This guy was the one who came up with the idea, but he didn't even want to do it himself. Was he just waiting to see others make a fool of themselves? Which group leader is willing to take on this responsibility? Time asked again. Such a difficult mission. Our small group definitely won't be able to do it. Let's ask the other bosses to send experts. A few small group leaders took the lead to express their opinions. Cough. I think it's a bit difficult. Someone from a large group also expressed his opinion. It's too difficult, too difficult. We can't accept this mission either. The other groups also expressed their opinions. This doesn't need to be done by any group. Anyone can do it. Brother Time. Why don't you recruit them one by one? A group leader suggested. Time saw that no one volunteered, so he could only use his trump card. Smash it with money. He immediately waved his hand. Then I'll have to trouble all the group leaders to call out to those who are willing to take on this mission. Each person will be given 300 gold. 300 gold wasn't a small amount. According to the current market price of mercenary groups, very few people would be able to get 100 gold, no matter how difficult the mission was. This was because there would be more mercenary players participating in missions that were more difficult. The high price would be split among many people, so there wouldn't be too much for a single person. A single person price of 300 gold. This was a record. It could be seen that Time knew that even though this mission wasn't difficult, it was a tough one. After the various team leaders clicked their tongues in wonder, they followed Reflection of Time's instructions. Reflection of Time wasn't idle either. He also made an announcement in his guild. If someone was willing to do it, that would be even better. As the saying goes, Don't let the goodies flow into your own fields. With a large reward, there would definitely be brave people. The words of the ancients couldn't be too wrong. After this news spread, people quickly responded to the summons. There were people from mercenary groups and guilds from reigning the four seas. Time looked at the few people from his own guild and was quite disappointed. These were the professional players that he knew from his guild. They were all professional players. Normally, they worked very hard in the game to earn gold. The coins or equipment they earned were all exchanged for RMB to put into their daily lives. No matter how much money these players had, they wouldn't spend it carelessly. The most important thing was that the equipment they wore was the best value for money. They would only work hard to earn money in the game. Earn money, increase their strength? This was something that other players would take for granted, but they would think about it. For example, if they needed 5 points of strength to complete a business that could earn 200 gold, they wouldn't hesitate to spend 100 gold to get a piece of equipment that added 5 points of strength. If the extra 5 points of strength were just to make a certain weapon perform better, or to increase their own attack power, they wouldn't spend this money. When most people thought of professional players, they would think that their levels, equipment, and techniques were all high. In reality, most professional players had high levels because they had invested a lot of time into the game. Their equipment, on the other hand, was common, but there were many different types because they had different needs at different times. In addition, their techniques were highly targeted. For example, they might be very good at running quests. As for things like PvP, they wouldn't spend the effort to hone their skills. Most guilds wouldn't take in too many of these players, but they would at least take in a few. They were also very helpful to the guild. However, Reflection Time didn't like these people. When he saw that these people were the ones who stood up for him, he knew that these 300 gold coins would be deposited into the bank in the blink of an eye. They definitely wouldn't be used to strengthen themselves. Even so, since they were going to earn money, it was better to let someone they knew earn it. Reflecting Years had already selected the people from his guild. Then he asked young Master Han, "How many people do you think are suitable for this quest?" 10 or so will be enough. The Han family young master smiled as he looked at the brave men who had come to participate. Reflection Time continued to choose from the other mercenary groups. He didn't care about levels, equipment, or techniques. Reflection Time just wanted to find people who were tall, wide, and took up a lot of space. This way, the effect of Minesweeper would be more obvious. As he sized up the players one by one, Reflection Time suddenly froze. This beauty is also participating in this quest. Yes. I've never done this quest before. The girl answered cheerfully. Reflection Time was astonished. He didn't think that even a girl would be willing to roll on the ground and get caught in a trap in order to earn money. Reflection Time couldn't bear to see this. He wiped his sweat and said, "You can't do it." "Why?" The girl was actually anxious. "Oh, we need this number." Reflection Time patted a tall and strong male player next to him. The girl looked at the player in confusion. "What number is this?" "He's quite tall." Reflection Time admired the physique of the person in front of him. With this physique, it would be impossible to clear the Minesweeper without him. "I'm quite strong too," the girl said as she slapped the tall man next to her to the ground. "See, he's not as strong as me." The girl was very happy. "It's not about strength." Reflection Time wiped his sweat and subconsciously dodged 2 steps to the side. The girl was indeed quite strong. The guy still couldn't get up after being slapped for a long time. This player was indeed tall, but he was actually a cleric. "Then what is it?" the girl asked. This actually." Reflection Time struggled to organize his words. He was in so much pain that he wanted to kill himself against the tree next to him. Fortunately, at this moment, one of the group leaders stood up and pulled the girl back. "Little Rain, you really aren't suitable for this quest." "Sister Luolua, why? How am I not suitable?" June Rain felt quite wronged. "Because this quest needs male players," Luoluo said. "Oh, I see." June Rain nodded. "No wonder. Then I'm leaving." With that, she turned around and really left. Reflection Time was stunned until the tall cleric got up from the ground. He held his shoulder and said, "Damn, you're a full-strength warrior, right?" Luoluo threw a healing spell at him. "Are you okay?" I'm fine. The tall cleric was also very broad-minded and didn't take the slap to heart. Reflection Time seemed to wake up from a dream and shook his head. Everything that had just happened was like a dream. Now that he had returned to reality, he quickly chose from the remaining people. There were a total of 10 players who wanted to join his guild. Without any hesitation, he paid the 300 gold coins. One person was 300, so 10 people were 3,000. The other players all sighed at this huge sum of money, but they weren't envious at all, except for those who had failed. The Han family young master stood up again. After sizing up the 10 people, he said with a smile, "Thank you for your hard work." As they stuffed the money into their pockets, they shouted, "For the mission." This caused a wave of curses. There are 2 ways to clear the mines. The first is similar to the depth of the water just now. We first tie you up with a rope, then throw you out and drag you back. The traps along the way will be gone. The second is to make you into a mop and push you as we fight our way out. Choose for yourselves. Hearing this, the 10 people realized that the second plan didn't require too many falls and was closer to their companions, so they all said, "We want to be a mop." Chapter 329. Making a mop didn't require any skills. After choosing the material for the mop, the players were very interested in the process of making it. Some wanted to participate and show off their skills, while others didn't want to show off their skills, but they still wanted to see the process. Apart from human flesh, rods and ropes were also essential. In the forest, there was no shortage of rods, and they were the kind that were very suitable for binding. As for the ropes, they were sponsored by Gu Fei, who tossed over 3 bundles. The players were puzzled. Why did this guy bring so much rope? The rope he used to swing from the tree was still hanging from the tree. He used one to tie up water depth, and now he took out 3 bundles. This top player really had a personality. Outsiders could only speculate, but those who were close to Gu Fei, such as Yutian Shenming, had already asked. There are still benefits to playing a game. Gu Fei sighed. It's so convenient to carry things in your pocket. It's not convenient to carry so many weapons in real life. Weapons? Are those weapons? Yutian Shenming murmured. Of course. So you have other weapons in your pocket. Yutian Shenming looked at Gu Fei's pocket. A little, but most of them aren't easy to use, Gu Fei said as he showed Yutian Shenming some. Among them, Yutian Shenming had seen the baptism of fire before. There was another similar one, which Gu Fei explained was convenient for wielding. There were also several small daggers, which were said to be used as throwing knives. There was also a large dagger, which was the whiteboard dagger from the werewolf's body. There was also a long wooden stick. Gu Fei stood in front of Yutian Shenming and explained, "Look, this is called an eyebrow stick. It's at the height of the user's eyebrows." When Gu Fei took out another one, Yutian Shenming was the first to exclaim, "Fork. Damn, 2 knives, a fork and a stick. So you're a teenage mutant ninja turtle." Gu Fei was very depressed, but he patiently explained, "This is called an iron ruler." Later it was introduced to Japan, where it was called Ronin's fork. People who practice karate often use it. Does Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles practice karate? Yutian Shenming mumbled to himself. Gu Fei fell into deep thought. I think so. Let me have a look. Yutian Shenming extended his hand. Even if this was Gu Fei's so-called iron ruler, Yutian Shenming was sure that there was no such equipment in the game. Gu Fei's wooden stick looked like it had been made by him, but this fork was obviously made of iron. How could someone without craftsmanship make it? In the end, when he took a look, Imperial Sky Shenming's face was covered in tears. The so-called iron ruler showed Uncle Murray's lost fork, a typical quest item. It's an NPC's item. Can you return it to him? You don't want to do the quest anymore? Yutian Shenming said. Quest? My goal in this quest is to get this. Gu Fei said, then regretfully added. Unfortunately, I only got one. I need another to make a pair. Later, find a kind-hearted person to do this quest and get one for you. Yu Shenming said as he continued to stretch his head out. What else do you have? Gu Fei was about to continue showing off when Unscathed in Battle came over. Hey, what are you still doing? The mop is about to start. Oh, Yu Shenming quickly ran away. Clearly he was more interested in the mop. Gu Fei shook his head regretfully. There was a reason why Kung Fu was declining. Look at Yu Shenming. He was more interested in these boring things than learning about Kung Fu. Aren't you going? I've got a good spot in the front row. Unscathed in Battle invited Gu Fei. Go. Gu Fei reluctantly put away his treasures and went to watch the mop with Unscathed in Battle. There were thousands of people, but there were only 10 performers. Everyone wanted to see it. Some players pouted unhappily because they wanted to see it too. However, they were scolded by Reflected Years, who told them to continue monitoring the movements of the lurkers around them. The rest of the people squeezed in one place, proving that Unscathed in Battle's good spot in the front row was necessary. The 10 contestants were now lying on the ground. The chosen mop maker held a rope in his left hand and a stick in his right. His face was filled with a never-before-seen smile. A group of gambling-loving friends had already placed their bets. They were betting on which mop would be made first. During this process, the bettors and makers were strictly forbidden to talk to each other to prevent cheating. Gambling had always been a very serious matter. Following Reflected Years' command, the crowd let out a roar. This was the most exciting moment since the Cloud City players entered the forest that night. In an instant, the sound of cheers and laughter rang out incessantly. The brothers from Waterdeep, who were still lying in ambush in the forest, were puzzled. They didn't know why these guys were suddenly so happy. Another wave of sneak attacks? Their original plan was not to launch consecutive sneak attacks in a short period of time. This might be more lethal, but it would be a continuous exposure, and it would be easy for the opponent to find an opening. These guys were good at this. They knew that delaying the front line and wearing down the enemy bit by bit was the way to go. However, at this moment, the opponent's mood suddenly became excited, and the air seemed to be filled with the smell of conspiracy. This made them very uneasy. In the end, there was a disagreement among them. Some people thought that the more it was at this time, the more they should see the situation clearly before formulating a strategy. Acting rashly would only lead to more serious consequences. On the other hand, some people thought that the opponents guarding the perimeter were a little uneasy, and it was the best time to launch a wave of sneak attacks. Just when the two sides couldn't reach a consensus and couldn't come to a conclusion for a while, the Cloud City players burst into cheers. 10 people-oriented mops had been born. Break through to the northwest. Arrow formation. Get ready to cover. Lurkers, thieves, cover the rear. While everyone was cheering and watching the mops being made, Reflected Years had already arranged the matters for the breakout. First was naturally the person who controlled the mops. This, of course, had to be a violent warrior that focused on strength. As the leader of the group, Unsworn Sword won an uncontested spot and became the captain of the mops team. And Unscathed in Battle was the most famous warrior in the online gaming world. Currently, he also focused on strength. He also won an opportunity and was secretly very happy. How many opportunities like this were there in life? Other than that, Luo also helped Jun's Rain get a spot. Although Jun Rain's equipment wasn't top-notch, it was extremely rare for a warrior to add points to a full-strength item. In addition, she also borrowed Slender Waist Dance's fire resistance equipment. There was no doubt that Jun Rain had an advantage. Fresh quests always made Jun Rain full of energy. She waved the mops in her hands vigorously. The person on the mops received the silent prayers of the players who were familiar with Jun Rain, but didn't make a sound. When Jun Rain calmed down, everyone went over to take a look. The person had long since fainted. What a coincidence. This person was the cleric that Jun Rain had knocked out in the previous election. He deeply understood the girl's valiance. When he was assigned to Jun Rain, he had already fainted from nervousness. For him, this wasn't necessarily a bad thing. The team quickly organized themselves. At times like this, Unsworn Sword usually had to say a few words. But at this time, he was probably eager to play with the human mops in his hands. He simply waved his hand and said, "Finally, it's our turn to ambush. Brothers, let's go. The tightly knit crowd suddenly opened up a gap. The Paladin players quickly worked, buffing the mob's team members with the required buffs. Following that, the 10 Tubu warriors were pushed forward by the other 10 warriors. Following closely behind them was the cleric team. As soon as they rushed out, they started casting healing spells. It was very important to ensure that not a single one of the mobs was missing. After that, it was time for the archer team led by Time Reflection. The archers were all sharp-eyed. No movement in the forest in front of them could escape their eyes. Apart from that, the mages were responsible for guarding the left and right sides. After that, it was time for some scattered professions. They weren't assigned a clear task in the breakout, but if a battle broke out, they would be the main force. Finally, it was time for some rogues and a few lurkers to form a team. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka commanded his brothers to set up a few traps here and there, hoping to get an eye for an eye. Most of them were stealthed rogues. If the opponent rushed out to attack, they would undoubtedly be pleasantly surprised. Gu Fei and Sword Demon were also assigned to this team. There was no doubt that Sword Demon was a rogue. Gu Fei, on the other hand, had the lethality to block 100. Time Reflection thought that it would be very intimidating to have him cover the rear. The effect of the human mops was very significant. The sound of the trap clips constantly popping played a beautiful tune. The players of Forest Shade City were obviously unprepared for such an excessive method used by the players of Cloud City. They had no established plan to crack it. The traps were triggered by the mops team, and the players behind could do whatever they wanted without scruples. The mages were not stingy with their area of effect spells to the sides, regardless of whether there were people or not. Because everyone knew that there was no one, it was just because you couldn't see it. Maybe there were rogues lurking, or maybe there were mages or lurkers or others hiding behind a tree. The players of Forest Shade City were obviously flustered by this large-scale attack from Cloud City, and the flaws in their arrangement were also exposed at this time. They were at a disadvantage in numbers, and they were even more scattered due to the execution of the encirclement. When the restraining power of the traps was lost, in the face of the concentrated and explosive charge of the players of Cloud City, they couldn't stop it at all. You're tuning in to the Lime's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.